All right, before we get into it today, let me start off as I always do and give a big shout out to the Patreon subscribers. You guys absolutely rule. If you want to get down, right, with the inner circle here, you need to go check out patreon.com/bigtruth. There's all different levels of patronage. They all have their own explicit benefits, but things that you get are things like early access to shows, giveaways. Actually, I got a giveaway. I still got the Michael Alago book. I slacked. I forgot about it. I got a signed copy for one of you guys. And I got some other stuff to give away too. So if you're not already, a member, better get on it. You join, you might get some free stuff right off the rip, right? But yeah, patreon.com/bigtruth. If you can't financially support the show, I understand hard times right now for a lot of people. Do me a favor and just share the show. Share the show with anyone you think would be interested in it. Give it a like, a subscribe, and give it a review wherever you listen. So some places like Apple, you can give it stars and write up a review. That will help boost it in the algorithms there and get it shown to more people. So that's how you can help the show continue to go and grow. And I appreciate it very much, and I love you a long time for doing that. Now, if you happen to find yourself in the unfortunate situation where you're in a motorcycle accident, the first thing you got to do, obviously after you make sure everything's all right, is call Glassman. The Glassman Injury Attorneys, bulldogs of the game, 617-777-7777. The easiest number to remember, 617, all sevens. Make sure you tell them I sent you. You have up to 3 years to do this too. So if you had something from the past, like a couple years ago, that you hadn't really jumped up on, get up on it. Make them pay for your bike, because we all know a lot of the people listening to this show have custom bikes that insurance companies don't really know how to value. So don't get taken. Have someone that will absolutely rep for you. You can see them on Instagram too at Gotta Get Glassman. If you need some artwork, then the first thing you do is go to tattooflashcollective.com. And yes, they do have Tattoo Flash there. If you have a tattoo shop, hit them up. Absolutely. But even if you need some artwork for your house or your garage or your man cave, your she shed, your cubicle at work, whatever it is, you need to spice things up. They got prints in all sizes from postcards all the way up to huge posters. And you can even choose the level of quality you want. You can have it on like poster print, or you could have it on like archival, like museum quality, never will fade, will be a family heirloom type paper. So hit them up. My man Johannes will take care of you over at tattooflashcollective.com. And if you use the promo code BigTruth at checkout, you get 10% off the order. If you are a Patreon subscriber, you get even more. You get 15%. The cat's out of the bag. But you know what? That's an extra 5%. And if you're outfitting a new tattoo shop, that money goes a long way. So tattooflashcollective.com, Big Truth at checkout. You need to be a Patreon subscriber to get the code for the 15%. So membership, again, has its privileges. If you are in the Northeast, come check out my shop, Chopperhead Custom Cycles, located at 13 County Road, East Freetown, Massachusetts. We are a full brick and mortar motorcycle shop. So that means you come in, we got a parts counter, we got a showroom, we got an area that has, riding apparel and gear. So, helmets, gloves, sunglasses, KDs, clears, yellows, anything you need, right, to get on the road. And if I don't have it in stock, I can order it and have it for you like usually in a day or so. And that goes for parts too. Like, we have a website. I can't update the website every day. Everything right now is crazy. Parts are changing in price and availability all the time. If you need something and you don't see it on the site, give us a call, 508-995-6764, 508-995-6764, or just shoot me an email at truth@chopperhead.com. Now, Chopperhead is spelt in the most masshole of ways, CHOPPAHEAD, not ER. We're not copperheads. We're not chopperheads. It's chop ahead, singular, not plural. But yeah, that's it, chopperhead.com. Check it out. For more information on the podcast, just go to Big Truth Podcast. And we have a little... poll going on. I got my man Buddha in LA has drawn up 3 new designs, and I got a little poll going on my Instagram, just at Big Truth. Give it a follow or give it a look over there. And I think I've already closed the polling on this. We got enough feedback. There's a winner, but everything was like really tight, so it's good. But yeah, so we got more. Long way to say we got more swag coming. So go to bigtruthpodcast.com. If you hit shop, there's all kinds of swag up there. We got some more coming soon, so be on the lookout for that. Now, this episode is a rewind. The first rewind I did was with Al Barr from Dropkicks and the Bruisers. That was obviously a music-oriented one. The second one I did is with my man Big Nick, rest in peace. That one was a motorcycle one. So, of course, this one has to be more the paranormal one. Now, it's my man Chris Pittman, who is the singer of Who Killed Spiky Jacket, which is a Boston area punk rock band. So about the first 40 minutes of that episode, we talk about punk rock stuff, and especially like in the context of Boston punk rock and everything. So check it out. It's interesting on its own. Now, but what you don't know, or what you may not know, is that Chris is also a UFO researcher, and is a cast member of Ancient Aliens. He was on the Bridgewater Triangle documentary, and a host of other documentaries that deal with paranormal and UFOs. Chris is also a UFO experiencer. So that changed. He used to be an active UFO investigator, and because of his experiences, he kind of got out of that, doing the active investigations, and will only do more archival stuff and historical stuff, especially like colonial era research into sightings and, colonial times and things like that, because he got so freaked out by his experiences. So this one is an awesome episode. We got a ton of feedback on that, and people who listened to it all the way got really freaked out by it. So it's definitely worth the listen. Chris has been on a few of the M4s since then. He's a friend of ours, and a solid dude. So make sure you listen to this one all the way through. About 45 minutes in it. Maybe you dim the lights, get a little creepy vibe going, freak yourself out. But without further ado, here we go right now.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have a liftoff.
Yes, once again, we have liftoff. I want to thank you for listening to another episode of the Big Truth Podcast. And today I want to announce Chris Pittman is here sitting across from me. We're at the tattoo shop, and we're going to be talking about all kinds of things: punk rock, paranormal stuff, UFO stuff, archaeology. There's a whole array of things we can connect on here. If you haven't seen, Chris has appeared in a lot of documentaries, such as the Bridgewater Triangle, which is where I first heard of him. He's been on Ancient Aliens, the TV show, and I'm sure a whole list of other things, but bands, Who Killed Spiky Jacket, which I remember you guys. And it's funny because I didn't know you at the time, but I think I've seen you guys somewhere along the way through the years. And I remember thinking like, wow, these guys remind me kind of like a Crucial Youth band, but more on like kind of being like kind of a little stabby towards the punk scene, like loving it and kind of giving it a good ribbon at the same time.
Cool.
And then later I saw that you guys got described as like good, clean fun. I don't know if you remember them, which is...
I do, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I've seen Who Killed Spiky Jacket described as like every possible kind of band. I've seen it described as like a raw punk band, a street punk band, a pogo punk band, or like a joke band a lot, or like whatever. I don't know, which is fine with me.
It's good when someone can't pigeonhole you. That's actually a good thing, especially in punk rock, right? Like,
absolutely.
And it was just fun. I remember... the show I was at, just for some reason remember a lot of beer and stuff getting thrown around.
That's the thing that we do.
Well,
Yeah.
You guys doing anything anymore?
We played in Miami at a fest earlier this year. I don't know. We've been talking about maybe trying to record some new music or something, but it's tough. I mean, I'm sure you can relate. Like when you're in a band that's been a band for a while, when you play, like people want to hear the songs that they know.
Yeah.
And there's like a trend cycle in punk and like a hype thing, right? And like my band was on that for a while and like isn't going to be on that again because it always has to be moving on to the next thing. So I just wonder if we even put out a new 7-inch, even like, I mean, the diehard like fans, people who really like my band would like it, but I don't know. And I think maybe we will.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Time will tell.
It's more about too is if everyone's on board and you guys are going to do. When you decide to do it, inevitably you kind of more do it for yourselves and just to have fun and get back together, find an excuse to do something, right? And then,
I mean, I hang out with the people in my band all the time. We're friends. I enjoy everybody. I enjoy hanging out with them. I love traveling with them. I love playing shows with them.
Yeah.
You know, it's tough. Like the punk scene's a weird place for me lately. I'm kind of alienated from it in a lot of ways, and so, you know, what exactly this. I don't know. Our band always was like a commentary, sort of, right, on punk a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't even really know too much about what's going on in punk anymore, I feel like, which is probably a normal thing, right?
Yeah, sure. But it makes it harder to write new songs.
Right. It would be like, what is it going to be about, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to be about my day-to-day life, my job, you know, it has to be about my ideas about punk. But the other thing is that all of our music kind of has been about that, or a lot of it has been about that. So it's like you can't just keep making the same points over and over.
Yeah.
At one time, I was kind of using the band as like a vehicle to try to inject into punk my ideas about what punk could be or should be. And I don't think that punk is ever going to be that again, you know. And also the reality is I'm 40 years old and the future of punk is like not up to me, right? It's up to young people to do what they're going to do with it.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know.
Yeah. You know, the weird thing is and I don't interact with, I'm not, all right, so I don't want to lie. I interact with Facebook the least amount that I possibly can. So that's a better way to say it. I can't say I never go on, but, you know, usually what I'm going on for is to go in a marketplace and try and find old motorcycles and stuff like that we bring in as projects or whatever, or if I find a good bike that I can clean up and flip for somebody. But, you know, I did, you know, from doing this podcast, I did join some like different groups just to kind of see what's going on and be able to be like, hey, I got this guy on, you guys might be interested, just to kind of help promote it.
Sure.
And I went into some of the new, you know, some of the punk rock groups, and I've never seen, I mean, it's pretty much the way the country right now is divided with like hard left and hard right.
Yeah.
That same shit is going on in punk rock, and it's a little disheartening. And this is with young kids, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And it's like pretty much like, you know, everyone's, you know, all you see is commie and Nazi. Like they're just throwing around those terms. Like if you don't agree with someone that's kind of a little more on the left, you're a Nazi. If you don't agree with someone that's a little on the right, you're a commie all of a sudden. And it's like, what the fuck is going on? And I don't know if that's just because it's a Facebook group and Facebook isn't super reality. Because when I go to shows, it doesn't seem like that. But it just seems pretty divided, man, right now.
Well, look, our whole world is different, and you kind of have to ask yourself on some level what the relevance of punk is to this world now, and like, you know, especially if I was a young person now, you know, with everything that's going on with like riots in American cities, like the violence that's happening, like the oppression that's happening to people and stuff, and it's like, if I was trying to find a channel to kind of rebel against that, I don't know that punk would be that for me now if I was a young person. You know, like when I was a kid, right, a teenager, I was basically extremely pissed off at the whole world, and I wanted everybody to know that. And that was like what punk was going to be for me and what it was for me, basically. And I just don't know if, you know, look, the like kind of, I guess, disturbing thing that I think about sometimes is if I was 15 years old right now, you know, I don't know for sure if I would be like a literal commie or a literal Nazi almost, right? You know what I mean? Because when I was a kid, when I think back to how I felt when I was a kid, I was so stupid, right? I mean, new to the world. I thought I knew everything.
Yeah. There's a little of just youthful ignorance, but also
totally.
you got all the piss and vinegar because
tons of energy, super susceptible to other people's suggestions too.
Yeah,
searching for belonging, searching for your tribe, and like my tribe might have been like extreme, like Stalin era communism. I don't know. You know what I mean? You know,
and it seems like that's one of the problems with the world being so virtual, and this has been something we've talked about before, is, you know, my tribe was like punk rock and hardcore and metal kids because we were all the misfits. But we all had different views on things, But the music or being the outsider is what kind of banded us together. Now you can go on Facebook and you got 5,000 people across the world in this group that agree with you. So you never have to talk to anybody else.
Sure.
And it's kind of weird. But it's like you said too, something else is like when we were kids, like punk was the rebellious thing or like hardcore or whatever. I punk and hardcore, I just kind of mission to the same thing, right? But like that was the rebellion, like like it wasn't cool, and it was like that was the fuck you thing, and like the outsider thing. And now with punk being pretty much a staple, kind of a cool thing, you know what I mean? It's like, what do you do to rebel when punk isn't the rebellious thing?
It's exactly. It's like, what is the rebellion? Is it like supporting Trump? Like, what the heck is it?
I don't know.
It's something probably terrible.
It's crazy.
No, social media has changed everything. It's like hyper reality. People there's aspects of your brain that actually just can't determine the difference between something that you see on a screen and something that you see in real life. You know? So when you're looking at a screen all the time and you're just being assailed with like every possible kind of imagery and every possible kind of political take, and it definitely changes the way that you think. I mean, when things were so different back before the internet, right? Like in the 90s, like first of all, when you met someone, there was no way that you could do like an instant background check and find out what they were about. You had to actually get to know them.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was, like you say, punk, any kind of like subcultural thing was the fuck you thing. It was the outsider, outcast thing. So then you were kind of like had to ally yourself, right, with other outcasts, even if you were completely different from them, because you had like cops and jocks and mainstream society and like your high school and your parents and everything, and everybody's parents, everybody's high school was this like monolithic thing that was against you. So it's like, I might be at a party with like somebody who is like an underground like hip hop guy, right?
Yeah.
Like, and also like maybe like a Nazi skinhead, and like maybe everyone's like drinking a beer because the reality is that despite the modes that people took, the real kind of enemy, right, was like your fucking high school principal or whatever.
Yeah.
It almost seems silly now, right?
Yeah.
In a way, but it was nevertheless real.
But that was your world at that point. That was your world. That was your whole world. Like, and you went out and the jocks fucked with you, and like I call it, quote unquote, not the class frame, but like the Guidos, the dudes that were wearing the Z Cavaricis, driving the IROC Z28s around, in listening to Dawkins and whatever.
Community, it was like your own different thing.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
You had your like weird enemies, and you could see looking at somebody what they were about, and they could see you and know what you were about, and that was like by design. The way that you expressed yourself was like this, a billboard being like, "This is me."
Yeah.
And if you saw someone in a town that you were in wearing a Misfits T-shirt, you'd like cross the street to be like, "Hey, man, I like the Misfits too,"
Absolutely, that's the thing. So in the touch on what you said, it was like, you get along with all kinds of different people. So like I was never into like the gothy stuff or like the like Bauhaus or any of that stuff, but I had friends that were, because we were, we were the Misfits or whatever. Like, so it was like, it was me. It was like that. Then, then I had like hardcore friends or like skinhead friends, or I had friends that were like, into like, more just like alternative stuff or whatever. But we all kind of would hang out. And even like this kid, Jay, that used to hang around with us, he was a skinny little like punk rock kid, and, super into like, he'd always wear his communist pins and his Stalin stuff. And it was like, I even, back then I was like, I'm not into that, but hey, dude, that's you, cool, whatever, you know what I mean? But he didn't try and, people didn't try and push their stuff on each other. You just kind of bonded over whatever was you look to find the commonalities more than the differences. You know?
The commonalities were like very like very readily apparent. You know what I mean? Yeah. Where it's like, we're all living in this like weird system that's like really tough. We all want to get outside of the system. I want to get outside of the system by like burning cities down or whatever. You want to get outside the cities by like apparently like, I don't know, like making factories like property of the state or whatever the heck.
Whatever like, you're into.
These are details we can figure out later.
Yeah. So then I know you can't handle yourself when the football team comes after you, so I'm going to come intervene and help you. That was what was on the forefront.
It's like, maybe you can't handle yourself and I can't handle myself, but the two of us together at least can break the window of their car, or whatever it's going to be. Right?
Yeah.
But no, like I remember I was like, when I was a kid, I was always like super dogmatic against goth. Like anything that was goth, I was like, I'm not going to like be involved with this, right? Like this was my stance.
Yeah.
But like in reality, like all kinds of my friends were into that, and girls that I knew were into that, and would hang out with that those people and stuff. And now I actually really regret it because I've come to appreciate like a lot of that music. I actually like a lot of that music now. There are aspects of that like subculture or what that subculture was that really appeal to me now. And I kind of regret that like in the 90s when that stuff was arguably like more relevant and real, it's not that I would tell anybody I hate it, I won't listen to it. I had never heard it.
Yeah. You just, dude, I know that's, and you know what? I am actually kind of glad that there are some bands like that or music like that I was like back then I have no interest in it, because now there's not much new stuff that I like coming out. So when I revisit that stuff, I'm like, man, I can't believe I didn't give that a chance back in the day. And I'm like, well, actually, I'm kind of glad I saved it to now. At least I'm like discovering something new now.
I mean, I just wonder what even it would feel like now to hear music that was like nothing that I'd ever heard before, right? Or to hear some form of rock music specifically that was like nothing I'd ever heard before. That's an experience that I had in my life that like I haven't had for years that I like wish that I could. And I don't know that. Look, I mean, just rock music is now, right, so old, and it's been done in so many different ways. Yeah. Eventually, there's only so much you can do with loud guitars and drums and vocals and a bass, you know. Yeah. So,
and even in getting into more subculture stuff like punk rock and hardcore and stuff has been around so long now,
right,
that it's like classic rock status, like a Dead Kennedys record or something or a Clash record or something.
They literally play Clash on the classic rock radio station.
Yeah, it's insanity. It's insanity. I mean,
punk. I've made this point a million times elsewhere, but punk was created in part as a rebellion against rock and roll, which had become stale, boring, and old. Yeah. Right. But rock and roll was younger when punk was formed than punk is now.
Yeah. That's what I mean. And so it's like you said, there's not new stuff. Like I hear some new bands every now and then that I like, but there isn't any new. Like when we were kids, there was like the old school kind of like punk stuff, and then there was hardcore, and then hardcore became more metal-y, and then then it was like it was hard to distinguish hardcore between metal, and then there was thrash metal and speed metal and this and that. But new things kept kind of coming out, and then even if the difference between like the old hardcore guys and then like the youth crew stuff came in, and then there was all kinds of just different scenes just kind of popping and popping and popping. Like now I feel like we're stuck in there's like 10 genres. And there's new bands, but there's, like you said, I never thought of this before. There's nothing that's like new. Like
no, it's really disturbing almost. Where it's like I listen to music from the '90s, like subculture music, right? Not like pop music, but like metal from the '90s or punk from the '90s. I'll hear it for the first time, and like a lot of that stuff sounds like it could be recorded today, almost, right? Yeah. And then of course a lot of the band, I like a lot of new music, but a lot of those bands, if it's like, oh, what does that band sound like? It's like, oh, it sounds like this band sounds like Sacrilege, or it's kind of like Slayer, or it's like early Dark Throne, or whatever it is, right? All these different genres, but it's like the pioneers of the genre. And I realized there's probably never going to be another GBH, probably never going to be another Discharge.
Yeah.
There's never going to be another AC/DC. Like, and we're recording this now during this coronavirus pandemic, and so who knows? Maybe there's never going to be live music again, right? I mean, who the hell knows what the story is there? But even besides that, like, look at like top 40 hits of any given week, like what people listen to, and it's like there's like nothing on there with loud guitars anymore.
No, so it's all electronic, like crazy auto-tune weird stuff. Like,
I don't even know what the heck it is. It's like bluegrass. I listen to it sometimes. I'll be flipping through the radio and it's like, here's like the great new #1 single, and it's like, I don't know. It sounds like some kind of like 1960s like girl group music, or like it's like bluegrass, or I don't even know. It's country music.
All kinds of weird stuff.
I literally don't even know. I'm so out of touch. I'm like so old. Like for a long time, like I'm never gonna get old. But it's like I am fucking old.
Yeah. Hey, but you know what? I don't know. I feel like if there's ever been a time for some kind of resurgence within like the punk rock world, like right now we're in a fucking time that should be generating some fucking good ass bands that with some good ass commentary about the world, because this is like the 80s bred a lot of good bands. Like this is like what we're living through now, like so surpasses like the craziness of the 80s.
It's like insane. It's tough though, because it's like obviously look, like our government is terrible, right? Like everybody basically knows this. Like literally everybody knows this. Like saying that the government is terrible is not like going to shatter anybody's mind at this point, or like the coronavirus sucks. Like I don't know. Like I think about it sometimes. Like what should punk's like attitude? What should the attitude of the punk scene be about like coronavirus? Should it be like insisting that the government pay us to stay home? Which like on the one hand, like I can totally relate to that. On the other hand, like punk asking for like the government to do something. It just doesn't, right?
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, it's like, I saw some like metal bands were going to be playing a festival coming up soon in some other state, and people were like incredibly mad and were like, if I am memorizing the names of all of these bands, I will boycott these bands. I will make sure that they never get to play any shows because it's so irresponsible for them to be playing these shows.
Yeah.
If anyone gets sick and dies, they're going to have blood on their hands. And it's like, I don't know. I kind of feel like we should be having shows, right?
Yeah.
But then again, right, if you say, oh, I think we should be like living our regular lives, then like you suddenly get put into this like category that like you are basically voting for Donald Trump.
Yeah,
like,
it's crazy.
Any questioning of like the dogma about the coronavirus, and it's like you are a fucking conservative. You are basically like Patrick Buchanan, right? You're like a Republican voter, and it's like this whole thing has become so politicized. Nobody has any room to move.
Well, that's the thing, and it's on both sides. So like everything's so fucking extreme now. Like it's like if you have the slightest nuance to a viewpoint,
right,
like you're automatically lumped in with a whole ideology that you're not part of. It's just
totally.
Like,
if you're like, hey man, I'd be more like, I know you just like came back from a state with like lots of coronavirus, and like I work with my elderly parents. Like I'd feel more comfortable if you wear a mask. It's like, oh, are you triggered, you little snowflake, you little, and it's just or whatever, right? You're right. It's on both sides. There is no room for any kind of a nuanced view.
No.
It's like, you got to be one or the other.
And then I hear things like, like I don't know, like I'll wear a mask in situations to be respectful and to not whatever. But do I believe it's really doing as much as they think it is? Absolutely not. I worked in some of these areas, but the thing is, if I'm walking down the street, you see people like yelling at people across the street that are around nobody. Put your fucking mask on.
No, it's crazy.
It's like, this person is just walking down the street, like they're like 40, 50 feet away from anybody. Like,
and there's also this like weird like projection, right? Where they're like, if the person feels like they shouldn't have to wear a mask, if they're basically on their own, right? Then it's like you, in your mind, when you're yelling at this guy wearing a mask, you think that this guy is refusing to wear a mask because he is some kind of like redneck, Trumpian maniac. And it's like, you don't know what this person's deal is, No, I wear a mask when I have to wear a mask. When I don't have to wear a mask, I basically don't wear a mask if I don't really have to. I mean, But it's not like I'm not refusing to wear it. Which is also, there are people who are refusing to wear it. I got kicked out of Walmart because I didn't wear a mask. It's like, I don't know, man. Maybe you should have just worn the damn mask.
Here's the thing. Like, if I try not to like, I limit my box store stuff anyway. But like, if I'm going into a local place and they're like, hey, can you put a mask on? Cool. Like, I ain't trying to get you fired or rile you up or bum you out today. Job. I don't give a shit, dude. Like, whatever. No. It takes nothing for me to throw something on. But it's like, at the same time, but it's just like some people, I see people driving by themselves in their own car wearing a mask. I'm like, dude, like, you need more oxygen in your life. You know what I mean? Take that fucking thing off. You know what I mean?
It's like, it's crazy to me that like discussing whether or not the mask is like effective, right?
Yeah.
Is like this politically wicked, sensitive, controversial thing. And when like the Surgeon General says you shouldn't wear a mask that much, or even Fauci or WHO or CDC, they've all flip-flopped around. So if you bring that up, people are not even looking at that and being like, whoa, you fucking, like you said, like, oh, you right wing, blah, blah, blah. I saw something in the New England Journal of Medicine the other day that I saw from some like crazy conspiracy website, right? I'm like, I got to see if this really claims what they said it does. And I clicked on this New England Journal of Medicine link, and it's like, oh man, here they are coming right out and saying this is, and who knows, right? If this could have been totally discredited later, I don't know. I'm not a scientist, right? Yeah. But this article, which was from medical professionals. You
would think if it got into New England Journal of Medicine, which is a peer-reviewed journal, like, which means for those of you that don't know, that means like it goes through a review process where different scientists vet it and make sure it should be good. You know what I mean?
So like not put words in the mouth of the people who authored the study. It basically said like, outside of like medical professional use, the masks are basically just to make you feel safer and don't actually do anything. And I'm thinking, geez, maybe.
Well, that's what the Surgeon General said.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm not endorsing or anything.
I know.
I'm literally sweating. People are going to be like, Chris Pittman is like, a Nazi because he said the mask. You know what I mean? No. So it's just like, and then I'm like, I could share this on social media and like have a little thing to say about it. It's like, I'm not going to fucking touch that with a stick.
No. And that's the thing, because in cancel culture, like people are just ready to fucking pounce. So for anyone, I don't think anyone listening to this is going to be in that kind of vein. But if you are, hey, this is two grown men having a discussion. Like, you know what I mean? And we're talking about nuances. We're not talking about our personal feelings on things. We're just talking about, this is what anyone should do, is have a kind of analytical conversation about things. Like, you know what I mean? And that's the nuance that's lost. And it's so weird because in this culture right now in the country, I think that's why podcasts and stuff are doing good, because so many people are like kind of rebelling against like just having talking points and memes be your main source of news. So when people can sit down, my podcasts go from like anywhere from an hour and a half to 3 hours, and I have a lot of people that listen to the whole thing. It's crazy to me that people do, but like I think that's just indicative that people do want more kind of substantial talk or listening to kind of more analytical or critical thinking.
Yeah, you can't like believe what they tell you on the news. This is like everybody should know this, right?
Yeah.
Like, for anyone who didn't already know this, which should have been everybody.
Yeah.
Like, remember, like in 2016, we had an election and they were like, Trump's chances of winning are 0, and then he won, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm like, oh, this is great. Now everyone's going to know that something here is totally fake, right?
Yeah.
Our world is fake. But I don't know, a lot of people just, I think, went back to the status quo. But I've been in a bunch of, TV interviews and newspaper interviews and stuff talking about UFOs. And this is something that's not even political, right? There's not really like an agenda about UFOs. No one's coming at it to try to twist UFOs to be like UFOs in the age of Trump or whatever. But then, the article comes out, it misquotes what I said, it misrepresents my viewpoint, and there's stuff in the article that's not factual, like more often than not, because the journalist, made a mistake or wasn't really trying.
Being lazy.
Yeah, right? And it's just like every time something is in the news about something that I personally know about because I experienced it and saw it with my own eyes, it's like what gets presented as a warped view. So it's like you can't even trust anything that you see anymore. Unless you see things with your own eyes, who the hell knows what the truth is about a lot of this stuff? Like everything in the news.
Well, the crazy thing is, and this isn't to like do a setup, is like, but that's the good thing about a thing like this, is that people can go and listen to the whole thing. Now, people could take certain things that you said or me said, or me, certain things that you said or I said, and then put in a weird quote, and then it looks bad because it's like you're taking this one little quote instead of taking it not in the context of the conversation. But at least we have like a format here where someone can go back and listen to the whole thing and be like, no, that's not what he said. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't say he'd be a Nazi skinhead, in this day, or he'd be a commie. Like, he's just saying, like, you can hear the nuance and hear the thing.
Right.
But, in this, it seems like now that everyone's so reactionary that, like, it would be annoying for you or for me for like a half hour if something like that did come out, because you have to be like, no, listen to the whole fucking interview, and then it would be all cleared up. But like, people are just so quick to like pounce, like with the most limited amount of information, where they're not even criticizing the source of the information anymore. And that's all I try and do on this is like, I'm not a conspiracy podcast. I'm just kind of like a critical thinker podcast. And it's like, look, when so much of the media, and this isn't conspiracy, you just look it up, so much of the media is owned, what is it, like 90% is owned by 6 corporations. You don't think that shit's getting filtered by the time it reaches you?
Yeah.
Go look up those videos where they just show like it'll cut across like 50 channels, and they're all reading the same exact script. It's fucking crazy.
Again, even though just to say that, right, it's like, oh, you're like anti-intellectual, right? Or if you think that the media is fake news, like you're like a conservative, you're a Republican voter, and it's just like
no, I'm a punk rock kid. I was taught to question authority from when I was a kid.
It's like it's totally been lost that people, that you've got to question the dogma, and your ideology and views are like uniquely your own, and it's just like, if you look at these weird sets of views that people adopt, I don't know, to me it's just crazy. Like if you look at like the conservative viewpoints of today, like what that stuff entails, or the liberal viewpoint, right? To me, they're all mutually contradictory of each other, right? It's like, I want this, but I also want this that like does harm to the other thing, and it's just like, I don't know. I I can't relate to people anymore.
No, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And it was fine when like Bush was president and I'd come out like with stuff against Bush and like, yeah. And then Obama was in, I was like, come out with stuff against Obama. Like, what are you
like,
fucking blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, dude, you got to be able to be, you can't.
There's no consistency to the ideological position. It's like bombing other countries, like I am against it, straight up. I just don't think we need to be sending drones to other countries to bomb them. I don't care, what badge is worn by the guy who's in charge over here. It's fucked.
Yeah, I mean, unless someone attacked us and we had to do it, so even then that gets into like a weird thing.
We got friendly nations to the north and south, and we got oceans to the east and west. So it's like, all right, if somebody comes here, right, literally, I don't know, if some invading army is invading, my hometown, if they roll into this parking lot,
then
I'll get the hell out there. You know what I mean? But
exactly.
Barring that, I'm feeling pretty secure.
Yeah. And I know it gets crazy. I think that's, what happens is there's so much like weird, I mean, to me, that's just part of government growth. There's so many like intelligence agencies and this and that, and they all got to justify positions. And then there's like, human greed factors into things and this and that. And they're doing these deals and they're doing this. And, we don't want this guy in because he's not going to do this for us. And we got to make it so that this guy takes over. And this fucking, it's just insanity. I'm all about the non-interventionist policy. Like,
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, keep it simple.
You can apply that same thought to universities and the newspaper and like government and your town government and the police in your town and like all of this stuff.
Yeah. There's once you get too bureaucratic with stuff, it gets out of control. But let's you brought up UFO stuff. Like you were a UFO researcher for a long time, and then you've branched off into all kinds of stuff. Like what got you going into that vein, and like what made you get interested in like starting like with the UFO stuff and all that?
Well, when I was a kid, I was always really interested in any kind of like hidden or weird knowledge or anything like that. I was just like magnetically drawn to like whatever it is. Like, I would go to the library in my town and get books about like witchcraft in the Middle Ages and like copy down spells and stuff and just have this stuff. It was just like the occult, right?
Sure,
Anything that was in like the greater sphere of hidden or secret knowledge. So like I was a little kid and I was at my grandfather's house and I was in his study. He had a really cool wooden bookcase that he made himself. And on that book, there was a book called The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. This is neat. And he's like, oh, that's a bunch of junk. Like, you can have that book if you want. And I read that book. I was probably like 7 years old.
Yeah.
I read that book cover to cover so many times. The cover fell off. It was like worn down, right? The corners of the pages. So it was like a sphere almost. I still have this book.
That's awesome.
And this book was a book that was written in like 1952 or something.
Sure.
Or 53. And so the cases that are being discussed in there are between 1947 and 1952 about. And they just like ignited my imagination. And so anytime there was anything that I could get my hands on or learn about that was about UFOs when I was a kid, like I remember there was a documentary on HBO that I caught a couple of times and I would check that out, And then it was in 1993. I was like 13 years old or something. And I watched the first episode of The X-Files on the night that it came on. And it like sent me into just, I don't know, I became obsessed with it. Like the first episode of The X-Files deals with some kind of, it's Scully and Mulder, right? The FBI investigators, and they're investigating a UFO sighting. And the beginning of the episode says based on actual events, which is like, I now obviously realize that it's like...
Could be so loosely based.
People saw UFOs and then other people investigated it. So that's the actual event that happened. But I'm like, oh, this is basically like a dramatization of a real thing that happened. Because I'm 13 years old.
Sure, yeah.
And so from basically the next day, I was like, I have to start investigating UFO sightings. And so I don't know how I even did this. I actually don't even know how I figured out how that I could get in touch with UFO investigation organizations. I think I bought a book at the bookstore, and then in the back it had a directory of some UFO study organizations, and I wrote to all of them, said, please send me information about what you're about. I got some stuff from those organizations in the mail, And I joined every single UFO study organization in the world that would have me as a member that I could find. And so all of a sudden, my mailbox is full of bulletins and newsletters and magazines and stuff, monthly stuff. And one of the organizations that I joined was MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. And I found out that there was a MUFON chapter that was active in Massachusetts and that they had monthly meetings at Cambridge. So I started going to those meetings, started to like meet with other people who've been investigating UFOs for a long time. And then I became an actual UFO investigator where people would report to MUFON that they had seen a UFO. And then MUFON, local MUFON, would dispatch investigators, which was often me and another guy that I worked with at the time. And we would show up at your house and we would, you would show us where you saw the UFO and we would talk about it and try to figure out what it was, and I'd write a report, send it to MUFON, that kind of stuff.
How old were you when you became an investigator?
Like 15 years old. I didn't have a car, didn't have a license, had to get a ride from my parents to like another UFO investigator's house, which, by the way, the other investigator that I worked with at the time was probably 65 years old. So you can imagine it was a pretty bizarre situation, right? I mean, but look, I would dress up, right? I had a button-down shirt, slacks, shoes. I was like super professional, had my tape recorder, my notebook, I had studied about how to become a UFO investigator. There was a course that you could take in MUFON. I never actually took the course because it turned out I didn't like really need to because I was just doing it. But there was a handbook for UFO investigators that I had read back and forward. And of course I was working with other more experienced people. I was like learning while I was doing it.
Yeah.
And look, there's only, at that time, and I think probably now too, there was like absolutely less than 100 people in the country who were doing this.
Yeah.
Like actually, like I am a UFO investigator, boots on the ground guy.
Yeah.
And so it was really cool. I mean, I had a lot of really cool experiences. I learned a lot. A lot of the time when people would report a UFO sighting to me, I was able to explain it like almost right away. I can't tell you how many people see Venus, the planet Venus, and report it as a UFO.
Yeah.
Planet Venus can look so startling. The planet Venus was fired on by anti-aircraft guns in World Wars I and II by people who thought it was like a plane with a light on, because it really can look like it looks huge, looks like it's close, and people see it. They report it as a UFO, but usually by the time,
hey, not for nothing, just like 4 or 5 months ago, I was looking at it outside of my house. I was like, "The fuck is that?" I was like, "Oh wait, that's like, But it took me a second. I was like, "Wait, that's not moving. That's probably Venus."
But it can look like it's moving too, because your eyes, the movement of your eyes. I mean,
sure, yeah.
Could talk about this endlessly, like all the things that get confused with UFOs, all the things that people think are UFOs. But basically, if I couldn't find an answer almost right away, I usually could only find an answer maybe a third of the time or maybe 25% of the time. And the rest of them were the unexplains. And there was a lot of unexplained, and they were really good cases. I dealt with people who were military pilots, who were commercial pilots, trained observers, people who were scientists, people who were police officers or had other, military officers, whatever, and they had seen these things that there's no explaining what these things are.
And like, how many of these were you going on? Like how frequent were they?
Well, sometimes I would do investigations over the phone. Those ones I mostly did by myself. I was investigating UFO sightings all over the United States and Canada just over the phone, interviewing the witnesses, writing reports, that kind of thing. It was about maybe once a month I'd actually go to somebody's house. Okay. And those were all in Massachusetts.
Sure.
And mostly I was looking to be investigating cases that had happened recently. And then there was kind of a protocol that would happen after that where I'd reach out to the local police, I'd reach out to local airports, try to figure out, and it was unbelievable. I'll tell you, the local police that I talked to, they weren't surprised when the UFO investigator called. They would generally be very helpful. And the airports often too. They would give me the information that they could give me. I can't imagine what it would be like trying to do that stuff now in this a very different world. I mean, this stuff that I'm talking about I did in the 1990s.
Yeah. Pre-internet,
pre-September 11th.
Pre-September 11th.
Why are you calling these airports?
Yeah.
But we had all kinds of ways that we would get the sighting reports too. I mean, we had a website. This was kind of in the early days of the internet originally. We were sending out postcards to all of the police departments in Massachusetts saying if somebody calls and says that they've seen a UFO, you can give them this phone number to call or whatever.
And would they actually refer? Did you ever get some from?
Rarely, but yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, there would be sometimes.
Cool.
I think most of the time they threw those things away, but look, we put that information out there and we were getting a pretty good, steady stream of new cases all the time. And a lot of the cases were, sometimes we would investigate older cases too, if they were particularly compelling, which a bunch of them were. Later on, I got into regression hypnosis of people who believe they've been abducted by aliens, which, I use the term abduction by aliens here because it's the term that people are familiar with, but to be technically correct, I don't think that they really got abducted or that they were necessarily aliens, but we can get into that later. But but look, I did these regression hypnosis sessions, and it was really wild, terrifying stuff. You
led them, or you there was a person a hypnotist that you worked with, or?
Well, I'll be totally honest here. The way that this works, the way that this is supposed to work, is that you should really have an actual hypnotherapist doing this stuff. Someone who is a medical professional should be doing this stuff. But the reality is that UFO investigation isn't a job, right? To be clear, it is a hobby. There is no money in this thing. So unless you have someone who happens to be a hypnotherapist who wants to do regression hypnosis of UFO abductees basically for a fun, good time hobby, then, you got to hire somebody to do that. And there's no budget to do that. One of the guys that I worked with as a UFO investigator, one of the other investigators, he had previously worked with a hypnotherapist who was able to do the regression hypnosis routine. And he had worked with this guy so much that, of course, he basically was able to just mimic everything that this guy did and induce the hypnosis and do the questioning himself. Cool. So he would do the hypnosis at the sessions that I was a part of. And he would basically ask the questions. And I more or less just sat there and was afraid or weird, just weirded out.
Yeah.
Or tape recording or making notes or whatever it was.
Still 15 or so at this time?
I'm 15, 16, 17, 18 years old,
Yeah.
And the regression hypnosis sessions were super crazy because these people are literally reliving in their subconscious mind. They are reliving these unbelievably traumatic, terrifying things. So first of all, it's just scary enough if you have someone telling you that they had this horrific experience, on board a UFO at the hand of these alien beings. But to be looking at this person as they are almost experiencing it, right? As if it were for the first time. I mean, we did a session one time with a woman who was describing a particularly traumatic, she was being mishandled by these aliens. I think she was struggling against them. And as I'm looking at this woman, 2 huge bruises appeared on her face, one on each side of her face, and we were all totally taken aback, and I think the regression hypnotist guy kind of waited until there was a little bit of a lull and then brought her out of the hypnosis, and we took pictures of the bruises. I mean, it was crazy to see that.
Yeah. And so, no matter what, as a kid, 15 or 17 or whatever, that had to be insanity to see that stuff. Not insanity, but crazy.
It was. Well, it was crazy, and then the thing is that during the course of my time as a UFO investigator, weird stuff would happen to me all the time. And at first, I basically just pretended that it wasn't happening. And the reason for that was because I wanted to be a scientist. I viewed myself as a ufologist, so as someone who was studying these things from a totally objective point of view, an outsider looking in. I am studying things that happened to other people, trying to figure out what the origin of these things were. But things started
Can I ask you a quick thing? So was your perspective you didn't believe or not believe, you were just studying the phenomena?
I believed then, and I believe now, that some UFO sightings represent legitimate eyewitness, encounters with something that we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So that's not to say that I think that they're aliens from space or, nobody knows, right? But I'm convinced that there are UFO sightings that are people seeing things that they don't have prosaic explanations for these things in our view of the world. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
So that was it. So it's I don't know what these things are. I'm sure that some of these sightings are misidentifications of modern things, and then out of the other spectrum of things, right, of the unexplained cases, they may have a variety of different explanations. I want to know what those explanations for those things are, and that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Sure. Okay.
But then when weird stuff started happening to me, you can't like be objective. You can't be an objective scientist who's studying like some kind of terrifying thing that happens to you. Right?
Yeah. What kind of weird things were happening?
Well, I'll give you like a good example that I tell people about a lot is that I got contacted by a guy who had UFO experiences in the late 1960s. There were multiple witnesses. There were some photographs. There was this, what we would call a high strangeness case, where there were like alien footprints and like aspects of this that were so weird that they were almost goofy. Or like part of this case was they would drive out to a bog and they would turn on the radio and they would wait to hear the song When a Man Loves a Woman by Percy Sledge. And if that song didn't come on, nothing happened. But if the song When a Man Loves a Woman came on, like the most crazy shit would start to happen to these people. A bunch of people, right? Like this doesn't make any sense. It's crazy.
Yeah.
That these kind of cases really came to appeal to me very much like later on. When I first started investigating UFOs, I would have laughed at that. That doesn't make any sense. I think at first I had like a bias. I thought these things were aliens from space. It's like aliens from space aren't going to come when you hear When a Man Loves a Woman. But, later on when I started to become more open to the idea that maybe this was something else completely, this kind of stuff, it's like, all right, this is a clue. So the way that he found me was because that series of sightings that he had and that the other witnesses had been investigated in the late 1960s by an investigator from the New England UFO Study Group. That investigator...
So this was local?
This was, it was in like, Weymouth or something.
Okay.
Like that. So this guy, it had been investigated. The investigator, shortly afterward, killed himself, and his wife blamed his UFO work. His wife thought that he killed himself because he got too wrapped up in the UFO stuff, or some aspect of the UFO stuff was sinister, and that's why he did it. So she basically burned all of his files. Oof. But the New England UFO Study Group published a newsletter, and the guy that I worked with at that time, his name was Joe Nyman, was a lead investigator with the New England UFO Study Group at that, like not at that time, but later. But he also edited the New England UFO Study Group newsletter. So he shared with me photocopies from 1975 of the files of this organization as it existed at that time. And I had put some of that stuff on the internet, which was at that time the only place on the internet where any of this material from this organization was found. So this guy years later, he had moved back into the area or reconnected with some of the other people that he had seen the UFOs with from decades ago. And he had called some of these people, and all of them wanted to talk about the UFOs and was like, was that real? This thing that happened, like, I remember it, but like, do you remember it the same way? Like, how could this be? And so he thought, you know what, I'm going to try to find the old, our old interviews and stuff from 1969 with the New England UFO Study Group. And he couldn't find that investigator, who of course is dead. But he did find my website, and he reached out to me, and he told me about it. And I thought, well, I'd like to meet with you. I met with the guy. His story was super compelling. He had the photographs. There was other witnesses. I mean, this case was really good, I thought. And talking to him, it became clear that he had the experience that we is generally called being abducted by aliens, right? Like there was aspects of this thing, he had missing time. He had all of the, when you've done this so many times, when someone starts talking and you almost know what they're going to say next, right? This stuff fits a pattern, and the stuff that he was saying fit the pattern. So it's like, all right, would you be willing to undergo hypnosis? And he thought about it. We talked about it. He thought, all right, I'll do it. Next time we'll get together again. So day of the hypnosis. Now this guy, his job was he was a professional sound engineer. We show up at his house to do the regression at his house. He has wired his living room for sound. He's got the microphone set up. He's got the recorder. He's brought home the setup so that he can record his own session so that he can listen to it later. And the guy who was the hypnotherapist stand-in sort of guy, the guy that actually did the regression, he had his tape recorder that he'd been using since 1979 or something, when he's back when he was newer at doing this. And I had my own audio cassette tape recorder that I had bought at Radio Shack that I had used dozens of times for these things. So we do the hypnosis session. No surprise. He remembers being on board the UFO. It fits all the other stuff that we've been working on. It dovetails perfectly with these other cases. Now it's time to take him out of hypnosis, and he's super excited to hear his own session. So he presses play on the tape that he recorded, and it's blank. It's like, well, that's all right. We've got 2 other tape recorders. The other investigator rewinds his tape, presses play to see how the audio came out. The tape is blank. My tape, also blank. What are the chances of that?
Yeah.
Like, how could that even happen?
Yeah, well, especially
like
the dude's a professional
He is
audio
a professional
engineer.
audio engineer and wound up with a blank tape. And I have used that tape recorder. I used that tape recorder later for like demos in my bands. I've used that tape recorder a million times. It never came out with a blank tape, but on that day it was 3 blank tapes. And almost every case that I investigated had some aspect like that.
That's crazy because it almost makes you wish like at that point you had like video or something and see if that came out. You know what I mean? Blank as well, like.
Sure. I mean, what if I was doing this stuff today with like digital stuff, right?
Yeah.
How would it be different, or if it affected magnetic tape but doesn't affect digital stuff? Does that say something about it? Or
yeah, well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is that people are quick to judge, like, oh, people are whatever, blah blah blah, putting things on or whatever. If you're putting someone through that regression, hypnotherapy. They're reliving something, whether it's manufactured or made up or it happened in reality. Like it's no less horrifying for someone to kind of relive that trauma. Are there cases where you saw that it was just something more like someone had some kind of psychotic break, like versus like there was something that there was some kind of like real experience or like
I definitely interacted with people who had mental illness during my time investigating UFO sightings a lot.
Yeah.
But usually with those people, it never got to like a regression hypnosis state. We never showed up at somebody's house and like hypnotized them the first day. That was part of a process when we were working with people because it was really hard because I actually, I will never do this again. For a bunch of reasons. That is to say, I will never hypnotize anybody ever again, personally. I later came to hypnotize people myself. I'll probably never do it again. And I will never work with someone who does regression hypnosis for the purpose of finding out information about UFOs again. And part of the reason for that is because, look, it is possible to conflate stuff, right? It's possible to just make stuff up when you're hypnotized. There's nothing about hypnosis that prevents you from just coming up with stuff from your imagination. Now, I don't think that that's what these people were doing, but
sure.
To be clear here, the fact that these memories are recalled under hypnosis, it doesn't make them more credible. It actually introduces maybe more reason to be suspicious of them, But the worst part of it, the real crux of it is that after the hypnosis session, you're talking to this person who is crying hysterically, has just relived this unbelievably terrifying experience where they're interacting with space aliens that are hurting them, some outrageous nightmare scenario, and then they're looking at you and you're like, okay, well, like what now? Like what is it? How can you help me? Or like what? And it's just like, I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm not a therapist. I can't help you deal with this trauma, right? And that's like the worst of it. But then the other thing is they're looking to me for answers, and it's like, what are these things? And it's like, I don't know. I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Yeah. Well,
how can I stop it?
That's why it's still called UFO or whatever, because it's unidentified. Yeah. So outside, you said those crazy things happened in your life that made you kind of be like, So one kind of example is what you just said, where none of the recorders actually recorded. Was there any other things that were kind of going on that were, you said kind of like weird things were happening?
Well, this like followed kind of a general arc. So I started, as I say, in the fall of 1993. And right away, when I started to join all those UFO organizations, I started to have really weird stuff happen in my life. There were unmarked black helicopters that were hovering over my house for such a long period of time that it was on the front page of the local newspaper.
Yeah. So it's not you making shit up. Like
it's like a front page of the Milford Daily News in October 1993. It's like, what was this? What were these? Yeah. And the newspapers, like we called the airports, we called the police. They said it wasn't, a hunt for drugs or whatever. We don't know what it was. I mean, it was like an air show out there sometimes.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
And I had joined MUFON. and I got back my application to join MUFON. I got that form back in the mail, and it was signed by the guy who was in charge of MUFON, whose name was Walt Andrus at the time. And me now being like this like UFO maniac all of a sudden, to have the signature of the guy who's in charge of MUFON was like a cool autograph.
Sure,
so I cherished that thing.
Yeah.
Well, then that thing, I bought a filing cabinet, and so that I could keep my UFO files in it in my room, in my high school room at my parents' house, right? And then that disappears. That form with Walt Andrus' signature disappears from my filing cabinet.
Just that one.
Well, there was some other ones that disappeared as well. And I'm like, I don't really have a way to like lose this stuff. Like, where could it be?
Well, and especially at that time, like your mindset, you were being pretty fastidious and being scientific about stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I literally bought this filing cabinet, which frankly was overkill, right? I mean, I didn't really have files. This was before I really started corresponding with anybody, but it was just like I needed to have this space to contain this information that I was gathering.
Sure.
Well, a few months later, I go to look in that folder again, and the document's back in there. But it's been replaced with a photocopy of the document. So the document that I have now isn't the one that had the original signature. It's a photocopy.
Weird.
And so I came to the conclusion, okay, the United States government has found out that I know too much about flying saucers and is coming to my house. They're monitoring what I'm doing, which, when I was 15 years old, that like made all the sense in the world.
Sure.
Now, obviously, I realized like it was not the United States government was taking my MUFON application, right?
But something did.
Well, yes, something did. And it was only much later, it was years later that I started to realize that this stuff that was happening to me had to do with the fact that I was like looking at this thing, and it wasn't because the government didn't want me to be looking at it. It was because the thing itself didn't want me to be looking at it. The reality of this thing is that if you start looking at UFOs hard enough and for long enough, UFOs start looking at you. And that is what was happening to me. So I started to see things. I started to see lights in the sky at night, and I would just kind of laugh it off or shrug it off. I mean, I remember one time I was in the car with my mother. I was probably 16 years old, and she's driving me home from my girlfriend's house or something. And suddenly there's this huge ball of light, in the sky. This little point source of light suddenly becomes, like the size of a softball, right? And then it becomes small again, and it turns red, and it moves up and down, and I'm looking at this thing. I'm just like, I guess I'm not seeing this. And my mother didn't say anything about it. We get back to the house. I'm helping her unload groceries or something from the trunk. We're back in the house, and I finally look at her and I say, hey, did you see that weird light in the sky? She's like, yeah, I was wondering why you didn't say anything about it.
Huh.
And it's like, well, why didn't you say anything about it?
Yeah.
But like stuff like that was happening to me all the time. The phone would ring constantly. I would pick it up, and there would be weird noises on the other end, or there would be silence on the other end. And, this started to come to a head only like much later. And I think part of the reason why things changed was because initially I thought that UFOs were probably aliens from space. And, I thought that the government knew about that, and that there had been crashes of UFOs, and the government had the UFO wreckage, and there was a cover-up and everything, and all of the stuff that is like this narrative that everybody knows. I believed all that stuff. I wasn't like 100% convinced of it necessarily, but that was my general frame of reference.
Sure.
So one of the things that caused that to change was I was reading the book, The Mothman Prophecies by John Keel. In that book, he is in West Virginia investigating like really weird UFO sightings there in the late 60s. And in part of the book, he describes being out in these hills in West Virginia and seeing these weird lights moving around in the sky. And he's got a flashlight. He thinks, I'll signal to them with the flashlight. So he signals Morse code for the letter. I think he signals Morse code for left, or Morse code for the letter L, and the lights move to the left. And he signals with them Morse code, the letter R, and they move to the right. And he's like, how can this be, right? Like, how do they know Morse code? How are they figuring out that, like, L means move to the left? Like, how do they even know? The whole thing is so preposterous. And then he thinks, all right, I'm going to come up with an arbitrary, random code where if I shine the light in a triangle, it means go left. And if I shine the light in a circle, it means go right. And he did that, and they moved that way. And he realized it's not that they know Morse code. It's that they're in communication with my mind. And I read that, and from that time on, my attitude about UFOs started to change. And when my attitude about UFOs started to change, the stuff that happened to me in my life started to change. So one day in 1999, my girlfriend at that time, she was working at a store in the Rentham Village Premium Outlets Mall. And she called me, and so this was in February 1999. Now, in the summer of 1999, I wound up going to Germany on like a vacation that lasted for 3 months. And but at that time, in February, I hadn't bought the tickets yet. I didn't really know for sure if that vacation was going to work out for me yet. And I hadn't talked to a lot of people about the vacation yet. I got a call from my girlfriend. She said, hey, I'm at work. Do you know someone who's a firefighter in this town in Rentham? I said, no, why? She told me the story. She said, I was in the bathroom. I was the only person at work. There was no one else in the store. I got out of the bathroom, and I walked in the store and immediately noticed that the volume on the radio was too loud. So I went over and I turned the radio down. When I turned around, looked at the store, there were 3 police officers and a firefighter in the store. The fireman approached me and said, hey, we're here to do like the monthly or periodic inspection to make sure that you are in compliance with all the fire code regulations. Now, usually when they would do that, she would get advance notice that they were going to do it. But in this case, she hadn't gotten any advance notice, but it was whatever, they're going to do it. So the 3 police officers started kind of looking around, going into the back and stuff, and the fireman said, well, we need you to fill out all these forms that say where you live and who you live with and stuff. And the purpose of these forms is in case there's ever a fire at the store. She was the manager of the store. So she knew that the mall had all that information on file and that the fire department also had that information on file. But she thought they're updating it, so whatever. So she's filling out the forms. And the guy's making chit-chat with her. And finally he says, okay, so here were the problems that we found. There was a fire extinguisher that was blocked, and the circuit breaker switch box thing in the back, the door was open and it needs to be closed all the time. Now, she didn't think about this at the time, but the fireman who was telling her that, he had never been in the back of the store. The only people who had gone into the back of the store where that little door was were the police officers, and they never spoke during this entire time. Never mind the fact that there were never police officers that were part of this fire.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's kind of weird.
So super weird.
A lot of times cops and firefighters don't even get along, so
sure.
Never mind.
So he says to her, hey, I see you sell Beanie Babies here. Do you have that super expensive Beanie Baby that you can only get in Germany? She's like, no, we don't have that one. He said, oh, you should have your boyfriend buy that for you when he goes to Germany this summer. She goes, oh, that's crazy. How do you know about that? How do you know Chris? And the guy laughs, and they all walk out the door, and they're gone. So she calls to tell me the story, and I'm like, well, you've got security cameras in there, right? She said, yeah. I'm like, just bring back the tape, and maybe I'll recognize this guy. I don't know. I don't remember telling anybody about this, but maybe if I saw the guy, maybe he is someone I know. She calls me back. She's like, you're not going to believe this, but I just checked the VCR, and the tape is gone. And I called the person who was in charge of changing the tape every day, and they swear that they changed the tape. And in fact, they later had to go out and buy a new tape because that tape the VHS tape, it disappeared. So then she calls the stores to the left and to the right of her store. Said, hey, did you guys get the inspection today by the fire department? No. So she calls the mall office. Is the fire department doing inspections today? They said, no, they usually tell us when they're doing it, and they haven't given us any notification. So then she calls the Rentham Fire Department. Are you guys doing any inspections at the mall today? They said, no, we're not. So the reality is that this guy wasn't even a fireman at all.
Yeah.
This fire inspection wasn't a fire inspection at all. Stuff like that was happening to me all the time.
Yeah. What do you think that was?
Well, what I think it was, look, as I mentioned, I was involved in Massachusetts MUFON at that time. I also went to meetings of Rhode Island MUFON. I went to Rhode Island MUFON, and I met a guy who had worked with John Keel when he did those investigations for the book, The Mothman Prophecies. And I went down there with some other guys from Mass MUFON. Now, this guy saw me. He came over to me. He said, oh, you're new here. My name's so-and-so. And I recognized his name. I said, oh, you investigated the Mothman stuff with John Keel. He said, yeah, I did. And I started to ask him about it. He started to tell me all about it. I was like, was that stuff real? I mean, was what John Keel wrote in that book substantially real? He said, not only was that stuff real, but there was stuff that happened that was so weird. He didn't put it in the book because it would have made it seem not real. There was, we went to go investigate a UFO sighting, and there were dinosaur footprints on the ground, and that didn't make it in the book. That was one example. So we talked and talked. I get back into the car with the guys from Mass MUFON, and they're super excited. They're like, that guy won't talk to anybody. We've been trying to get that guy to talk to us about those cases for years. He won't answer any questions about it. He just refuses to talk about it.
Weird.
We need you to talk to this guy. Please talk to this guy. Write it down. Record it. We have questions. Like, can we convey these questions through you? So, I'm thinking, why did this guy open up to me about this? But I didn't think about it too much, right? So I started an email correspondence with this guy. And I said, do you still investigate UFO sightings? He said, no, I stopped. I stopped not that long after the Mothman stuff. I started to have like really weird things happening in my life. Like files were like disappearing from my room. And I was seeing like weird lights all the time. And weird aircraft were hovering over my house, and people who were pretending to be local government officials were like harassing people that I associated with. Like my blood is running cold because he's describing my own
everything.
life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what happened then? And he's like, well, some like much worse stuff happened, and I like just stopped doing it. I didn't do anything about UFOs for 15 or 20 years or whatever it was.
What year was that?
This was in like 1999. I'm talking to this.
So 6 years. 6 years you had been kind of doing it.
I've been investigating UFOs for about 6 years. So, or so, right? Like 5 years.
Yeah.
So, then the guy starts to send me really weird emails. He sends me an email and he's like, listen, I don't want to freak you out, but are you having dreams about these specific subjects? And I don't even remember now what the subjects were. Like there was some unrelated like topics that you could have dreams about. And I was having dreams about all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, where is this about? Like, where is this going? And he was like, listen, this is going to sound really weird. Do you have like a rash on your groin? And I did. And I didn't respond to his email, and I never talked to him again. And it was like around that time I started to think like, what am I getting myself into? You
were about, like 19 at the time, right?
Yeah.
Roughly.
Yeah. So I realized, okay, if we think about that Mothman prophecies thing, right, what we can learn from that is that the UFOs are in touch with the guy's mind. I realize UFOs are in touch with my mind. I'm investigating UFO sightings. I'm going to places where UFOs are being seen. I'm investigating the Bridgewater Triangle. I'm like out there. I went with my girlfriend and another friend of mine to investigate some UFO sightings that had just recently happened in the Freetown area. I show up in my girlfriend's car at like 8 o'clock at night. It's getting dark. And I'm just driving around in some of the streets in Freetown, around the Freetown Fall River State Forest, where these UFOs had been recently seen. I get pulled over by a police officer. And the police officer is like, look, you're like driving erratically back and forth around in this neighborhood. What's going on? I said, well, you're probably not going to believe this, but I'm investigating UFO sightings. And he was like, oh yeah, no. Okay, sure. That makes sense. And I was like, oh, so you know about them? And he kind of like caught himself. He was like, I don't, I can't really talk about it. But I can tell you this. You don't want to be like in this neighborhood looking for these things. There is an area in Berkeley that is on the Taunton River, where it's tidal, and you can go there and you can like hang out all night and just like take a look and see what you see. So I'm like, all right, cool. So my girlfriend, my other friend, and I, this was in 1999, we drive out to this spot, and it's like a sandy kind of a riverbank next to like some kind of power station, some kind of generator or something that's humming, and we set up a tent. We just sat out there all night. We watched these fucking weird lights in the sky, I'm like lining them up with tree branches to make sure that they're moving. It's like, these things are moving.
Yeah.
It's not an aircraft. I don't know what it is. Eventually, we're all super tired. It's time to go to sleep. We go to sleep, wake up the next morning, do some sightseeing, go back home. That was fun. It's just another day in the life of a UFO investigator. Starting that night, my girlfriend's behavior changed completely. We used to always sleep with the bedroom door closed. Now, the bedroom door had to be open. She developed an unbelievable fear of anything that had like a picture of an alien on it, which I had shit tons of this.
Sure,
stuff.
of course, yeah.
First of all my magazines and books and everything, but also like, look, I had been in high school. Everyone knew me as the crazy UFO guy. Any kind of alien thing they would give me as a knickknack. All those knickknacks now had to go. And I'm like, so, I don't know. Was it because of those like lights that we saw? She's like, no. But I remember now. I forgot to tell you about this really weird thing that happened to me that night after we'd all gone to sleep. She said, I woke up because that generator thing that we were camped near was getting louder and louder and louder. It was getting so loud that I felt like my whole body was vibrating, like I could feel in my body like the vibration of this thing. And as she's saying this, I'm getting sick to my stomach because the exact wording that she's using is the same wording that was used by many people that I had worked with under hypnosis who said they'd been abducted by UFOs. So I'm like, okay, so you like felt vibration in your body, like then what happened? She's like, well, I wanted to tell you about it, but I couldn't move. I was like paralyzed. And of course, you know, that's like the next step in the UFO abduction thing. And I'm like, I'm just so scared. I'm like, okay, well, then what happened? She's like, I don't know. It's so funny. I don't remember what happened next. You know? And not that long after, and now I'm like, okay, did I cause this? Like, did this happen because of me? Like, why did this happen to her? Like, what have I done? Like, why am I messing around with this stuff? Like, why did I want to set up a tent and like sleep in a place? You know? So I'm like, I'm now all the
That's
time.
some weird cop that wouldn't tell you about UFOs. Told
Right?
you to go over
like,
there.
That's
right?
crazy, right?
Yeah,
So now I'm thinking about this every day, and I'm like, okay, I am like now in mental communication with UFO occupants, and I am focusing on UFOs all the time. I am thinking about it all the time. I am aware that my thoughts are being communicate. You know, my thoughts are being received by something. I'm sending something and it's being received by something, and there's something that's having effects on my own life. And so this probably is the point of the story at which a large part of the audience is going to stop believing anything that I'm saying at all. Because what happened was I became able to predict where UFOs were going to be seen. You know, I would just basically wake up in the morning and be like, all right, there's going to be like some UFO activity in this area. And then like over the next few days, like the reports would filter in or whatever. And so I'm like super excited about this. This is like good. But scary, but
did
good.
it just like come to you? Like you'd get
I'd
up?
wake up in the morning and I'd know something I didn't know the day before.
Yeah. It'd just be in your head like, oh, today there's going to be, or
I just go to think about UFOs. I'm like, okay, so yeah, so soon, you know, or today this is going to happen, and then it like would happen, you know. Which, listen, frankly, I actually don't really care if anybody believes it or not, because this is just the truth. This is what happened to me, and
you're acknowledging how it sounds, but you're telling you that this is your truth, your experience.
Take it or leave it, and I don't care if you leave it, you know, because this was my daily life, and this was absolutely, you know, I'm not even going to go any further into trying to convince anybody, because I don't even care, right? Yeah. So I would wake up with this like this new additional information, and you know, but meanwhile, I'm racked with the feelings of fear, because I've got a random guy telling me that I got a rash on my groin and telling me what I'm dreaming about. My girlfriend is getting abducted by UFOs from space, and now she's terrified and has bad dreams every night. You know, and it's just like, also there were two guys that I knew through MUFON who were doing UFO investigation in New Hampshire. And they were also doing some like free energy investigations and stuff that they believed were kind of like, it was like parallel to the UFO stuff for them. And they were super excited. They were like, all right, we're making unbelievable progress. We're finding stuff that is going to change the whole paradigm of this thing. Like this is going to blow the whole thing wide open. And they were talking about UFO sightings that they were investigating in the White Mountains in New Hampshire. Well, those guys went up to the White Mountains, and they were camping out too, like what I was doing. And those guys died. They mysteriously died in their tent. You know, they were just about to release all of this information, and the two guys died, and none of the information ever got released, and it was just like a weird big mystery, and it was just an unanswerable question, you know. Meanwhile, there was another guy that I knew of who was basically... he had gotten so wrapped up into this stuff that he believed that the government was going into his car in the morning, in the middle of the night, and emptying the ashtray out of his car. Like, but you know, on some level, he's telling me this, or I'm hearing about this from a third party, and it's like, okay, though that's absolutely insane. But on another level, it's like, I bet his ashtray is being emptied at night. You know, because the stuff that was happening, it didn't make any sense.
It's just kind of random shit, just to kind of fuck with you, type of thing.
Fuck with you.
Yeah.
To fuck with you. So it's like, this thing is fucking with me. It's fucking with me. It's giving me information, but it is also fucking with me, you know, and it's like, meanwhile, I'm doing all this research about other people who have been in the same situation, because I'm not the only person that this kind of stuff ever happened to. There's been dozens and dozens and dozens of people, and a lot of them have died, and a lot of them have like gone insane or had some other horrific thing happen to them.
How did the guys in New Hampshire, how did they how did they pass, or what was it? How was it reported?
It was reported that they passed because of like a fail. They believed that they like died of carbon monoxide because of malfunctioning heater in their tent or whatever. Okay. But his family was like, I think it was in June that they died. His family was like, he didn't even use the heater. He only used the heater on extreme cold weather. Like they didn't believe it. You know what I mean? It was one of those things where it's like, is it plausible that this guy died because of a malfunctioning tent heater? Sure, but like, you've got to think about this in like the whole totality of everything that's happening to me too, right? Where it's like, all right, great. My UFO friends are going insane and dying. And I now am having mental communication with UFO space aliens. And, my girlfriend is getting scooped up. And, what the heck is next, right? What's next? So I'll tell you what wasn't really happening. I wasn't really able to predict the UFO sightings in a way that other people could like verify, right? Like I couldn't prove that I was doing this. Like someone would say, okay, well, the UFO sighting was seen in this town, and I had known that they would be, but I hadn't written it down. I hadn't told anyone. And look, I still was holding on to like respectability. Like if I had told the other people in MUFON that I was like getting these mental communications from these things, like they would have kicked me out of the car. Yeah. Like, no one wanted to deal with this stuff. It's insane. I was rapidly spiraling away from just being a guy who tape records an interview and becoming some like the subject of the interview, Sure. And so finally this comes to a head. It was in 2000, I think. I was at work and I'm like, I need to bring this to its conclusion, right? Like I need to bring this to the next level. Like it had been ramping up for years, and it's like it's time to go somewhere else with this. So I was walking home from work. It took me like an hour to get. I got home. I got out of work at like 3:00 in the morning, and so it was like a long walk in the middle of the night home to Alston. And the whole walk home, I'm focusing on it. I'm thinking, all right, like I know that you are aware of me. Like I know that you can sense that I am thinking about you. Like I need you to manifest yourself in some way that I'm going to be able to show this to other people, and people are going to know that this is real, And I'm thinking about it, and suddenly in the sky above me, breaking through the clouds, I see this like sphere of white light. And it has descended from a higher altitude. It's broken through the clouds. I can see it clearly. It's not an aircraft. It's not a helicopter. There's no sound. It moves silently through the sky, and then it shoots up and goes up through the clouds again, and it's gone. And I was like elated. I'm like, all right, that's a breakthrough. That never happened before. I never was like trying to beam my thoughts to them, and then I see some kind of light, right? This is tremendous. I get home. I wake my girlfriend up. She's sound asleep. I'm like, I got to tell you about this thing. It's so awesome. Like, I was thinking about it. I was trying to like beam my thoughts to this thing, and I saw this light, and suddenly, now I'm looking at her in bed. Behind me is a window. I'm looking at her face, and I suddenly said, if you look out the window right now, you'll see a UFO outside right now. And I turn around as she looks at the window behind me, and there is a triangular object in the sky just for 2 seconds as it moves from the top of the window frame down, beyond the building behind our apartment, and it's gone. And she's like, I can't believe it. Well, that's amazing. She's totally, her mind is blown. My mind is blown. I'm like, all right, cool. I have broken through. I'm going to find out what UFOs are. And, I'm super excited. I can't sleep. She finally drifts off to sleep, and I'm just lying there awake in bed. And I hear something in the other room, in the apartment, moving around. It's a thing, like a person, like a alien, right? And I realized it's like, you want the next level of this thing. All you got to do is go into the kitchen, because there is something in there, something that's like a person, but it's not a person. It's moving. It's making noise for me to hear. It's not a mouse. You can hear the sound of something that's big, something that's walking on 2 legs, sitting on your kitchen chair or whatever. And I'm like, I'm out. That's it. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this thing where I'm going to have some kind of monster in my freaking kitchen when I'm trying to live in an apartment with my girlfriend, live my life. I never investigated another UFO sighting after that. I stopped doing it. I still kept in touch with people, but less and less, you know?
Yeah.
I still followed the stories, but like not the way that I did. And I still was getting information. I still would wake up knowing something that I didn't know the day before, but that started to be less and less too. And I wouldn't act on it. Sometimes it was stuff like maybe I could have acted on it, right? Like maybe I could have written it down and then showed it to someone else. I didn't want any part of it. So finally, one day, I wake up and I'm like, okay. And I basically felt like I had been given a goodbye. And I felt like the consequence of this goodbye, I felt like what the goodbye was substantially was, okay, you're out. You don't want to do this anymore. You're not playing with us anymore. We are not going to interfere with your life anymore. We appreciate what you did. And because we appreciate what you did, we're going to give you a heads up. You are going to die in December of 2012. The only way that you can avoid this fate is you have to switch over to some kind of Eastern mysticism lifestyle where you renounce all your worldly possessions and go follow like weird Eastern religions or something. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'd rather die. This was in 2000 or 2000. It was in, I think, 2000 that this what I'm talking about. So it's like, I'd rather just live 12 years than like renounce everything that I like and all my friends and go try to be some kind of weird guru. Not doing it. So the epitaph of this story and the end of this part of this story was in 2012 in the summer. I did an interview for like a podcast in Attleboro, Massachusetts. And I was living in Attleboro at that time. It's like the only reason why I did it. You know, I still would do like interviews, like the ancient alien stuff. It's fun, you know?
Yeah.
I don't talk about this stuff on those kind of things. You know?
Oh, yeah.
So I met these people from Attleboro Paranormal, and there were some people that were really, everyone was really friendly. Some of the people struck me as like really earnest, really intelligent, and some of the people, frankly, struck me as being a little flaky or weird. And I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way, but like, if you look at people who investigate UFO sightings, like talk about a subculture. Like these people are weird. A lot of these people are really weird.
Sure, yeah.
So, and then when you're talking about like paranormal in general, people who do ghost investigation and psychics and stuff, you're dealing with some really weird people. And some of these people are like, some of these people might have mental illness, and some of these people are just like, they're living on a level of life that like you don't even want to even grasp. So whatever their truth has made them visibly weird. So I did the interview. I talked about UFO sightings. I talked about, you know, archaeology and stuff like that, and the things that I was into, and Bigfoot and everything, fun stuff that's fun to talk about. And at the end of the interview, the interview ends. Everyone's really happy. People enjoyed it. People want to ask me some other questions. And there are these like two women, an older woman and a younger woman. And I don't know what their names are. They approached me, and one of the women said, "Hey, you have a spot on your aura. Do you know anything about this?" And I'm like struggling to keep a straight face because it's like in all of this stuff, I never dealt with anything like an aura. Right?
Yeah, sure.
And I'm like, I have been dealing with psychics. I had been doing some lecturing where I talked about UFOs, and like psychics would come, or other psychics would be lecturing at the same time. And, so, you know, and I never really gave these people any special treatment. I mean, look, like anybody else, right? I'm not going to shun them, but like, I don't know, psychics, not my thing. So they're like, I'm like, I'm trying to humor them. I'm like, I don't really know anything about a spot. They're like, well, look, it seems to us like there is a spot that's on your aura that has been placed by someone or something else. And my gut is that it might have to do with something about your UFO investigation. Was there anything that you ever did or experienced in your UFO investigation where you felt like maybe there was like a negative force, or maybe there was like something about, you know, your future life? And I'm like, just try. I'm like very like concisely being like, well, you know, now that you mention it, to be honest, I felt like UFOs made me feel like I was going to die in December of 2012. And they were like, that's it. That's what we see. And I'm just like, I'm thinking, this is insane. I'm in an insane asylum now. And they said, would you mind if we removed this spot from your aura? You know, it might change. We could remove the spot from your aura. I'm like, sure, remove the spot. And the older woman said, all right, I'm going to do it, and because I'm teaching this younger woman how to do this stuff. And I'm like, all right, sure. How long is it going to take? It's just going to take a few minutes. All right, sure. They said, give us your hands, and we are going to put pressure on the palms of your hands, and we are going to remove the aura. I put my hands out, super reluctantly. I'm so embarrassed. I'm at a 10 out of 10 embarrassment at this moment. Put my hands out, and the women, each woman takes one of my hands and starts pressing on my palms. And I don't remember anything that happened after that. Like how long it took, what they said or what they did. I have no memory of this. The next thing I remember is them being like, that's it. Your aura the spot is removed. We removed the spot. Your aura is perfectly clear and clean now. How do you feel? I felt so good. I have never felt so good in my whole life. I felt like I could run through walls. My plan that day was to go home and go to sleep after that interview. I got in my car, drove to the city to hang out with my friends. I drank like 700 beers, didn't get a buzz. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're all adrenalized.
I was like, and it's like, and that I never had any other weird experience ever again.
Yeah. Fucking crazy. Huh?
It is crazy, right? And it's like, I tell the story to people, they're like, you need to get the names of those women. Like, you need to find out from those women what they did. Like, you need to get statements from these women and stuff. And it's like, you know, okay, look, if those women are listening to this, like, thanks, that was crazy. Like, I believe you. Like, something you have a realization of something that I don't know anything about. But like, I also don't want to know anything about it. Sure. I don't want to know anything about any of this stuff anymore.
You know, what you need to know is that it's 2020 and you're still here.
I'm still here, right? You know, and who knows? Like, I'm not saying that the reason why I survived is because of this, right? Yeah. But it's just like there are like aspects and. Even, you know, I would say, let's say that you think that there was no contact with a non-human intelligence on any of this level, right? That everything, it was all in my head and everything. Well, there are aspects of human psychology that are weird, at the very least, right? Yeah. Like, so it's either that or what I believe is that I was in touch with a non-human intelligence during that time. Sure. And that had I continued, I would have like learned something about it, but I really think I would have like died like other people that I knew, or I would have wound up institutionalized like other people that I knew, you know. And it's not like aliens. It's not aliens from space. It's something based on this planet. I don't know what it is. You know, I did write some things over time, little things on the internet here and there, like little pieces of this story, very small, but mostly just about like UFOs and sightings, not about like the mental communication, but just saying that I think this thing is a non-human intelligence based on this planet. Here's some evidence for it and stuff like that. And there was a guy who emailed me. I think he'd heard a radio interview with me. And he's like, I really liked your interview. I wanted to, if you have time, could you answer some questions? And a lot of times I get emails like that and I give a short answer. Or I don't even answer because a lot of times the questions are not good. And you know, there's a lot of weird people out there, right? Sure. This guy's questions were really good. It was clear to me from his questions that this guy really grasped what I was trying to say. I answered his questions. He asked me some more really good questions. The more I talked to this guy, the more I came to think, this guy gets it. You know, maybe this guy is having a similar experience of his own. So finally I said, look, you know, I don't mind answering your questions, but maybe you could help me out. Like, what's your background on this stuff? He's like, I've been dreading the day that you were going to ask me that question. The reality is that I am a Baptist minister, and I think that UFOs are demons from the devil. And I use information from your work in my sermons to my congregation. And I stopped talking to the guy. But the thing is that the thing that I hate to even say is that the thing that I was dealing with was more like what you would think a demon was, I think, than like what you would think an alien was.
Yeah. Is that where like the whole like the trickster type thing comes
the
into?
Trickster archetype. Yeah. And you can go back thousands of years to the earliest human writings and find this stuff. You know, other people have written about this. It is deceptive. It is like controlling. It appears in different guises to people at different times. But there are parallels. There are parallels between fairies and like elemental beings in Native American folklore and, you know, Sanskrit writings of the earliest religious texts, and all religious texts have elements of stuff that is going on right now, that people are experiencing right now. And, you know, what is it? You know, I don't know what it is. Nobody knows what it is. Yeah. But it's something.
Why do you think it chose to talk to you? Like, and I'm just saying, because there's hundreds of people that research UFOs. Is it because you were so
that's what I
ingrained?
I had friends. I had girlfriends. I had Music stuff. I was like in a band when I was in high school and stuff, but UFOs were my focus. UFOs were my priority.
Yeah.
If I wasn't hanging out with my friends, which was most of the time, it was get home from school, go into my bedroom, crack open a book, and that's where I would remain until it was time to go to sleep and wake up the next day. The first thing I thought about the next morning was UFOs. The last thing I thought about before I went to sleep was UFOs every night.
Yeah.
And also, I think part of it was that I think that if you just stay within the narrative, right? If you stay within the confines of these things are aliens, and if you have weird stuff that happens to you, it's probably because the government doesn't want you to be snooping around, right? If you stick with that, I think it kind of likes that, and I think it created that sort of. It created that story as a way to channel people into following this story. But if you step out of that, that's when you start having that's when things start to get really weird.
Because you might be on the real.
Once you start to get away from like thinking that these things are like space aliens that the government's covering up and realize that it's not the government that's not, that fireman wasn't a government agent.
Yeah.
The fake fireman, right? That guy was like, that guy walked out of that store and vanished. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
That guy doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist, yeah. Wow, man, that's heavy shit, dude.
It's wild.
It's
right?
wild, right?
So,
yeah, dude, fucking wow. That's heavy shit, man. So you haven't looked into, obviously it's something that you haven't followed up on. Like, do you have, like, if you had to postulate, like, I know it's like a non-human intelligence. Is it something like, I know there's been like a lot of theories about like interdimensional stuff or like, if you had to think about like off of not the beaten, but the alien government narrative, like, you have a Baptist saying it's demons. I know other people say it's other interdimensional stuff. Like, what do you have a gut feeling of what it was?
The problem is that you get to a point where you're explaining a mystery with another mystery.
Yeah, sure.
UFOs are demons. What's a demon? UFOs are interdimensional. What the heck is another dimension?
Yeah, sure.
And it's like, that's it. That's the whole thing is, and the fact about me saying that it's a non-human intelligence based on this planet, that's like gut feeling stuff too. And I could point to evidence that suggests that, but in reality, there is no proof of any of this. There's no proof of any of this at all. It's all like evidence. Here are some facts that don't fit. Here are things that nobody can explain. And here's a pattern, that goes back to the very earliest human history that is present in every culture. And it's like, what is this thing?
Sure.
What is this thing? And, if you could prove it to me, I don't think this is the case, right? But if you could prove it to me that this is some kind of remnant thing in the human brain from maybe millions of years ago, right? From monkeys or something. That it's like somehow this comes from people. Okay, well, I could believe that. I could probably believe that more readily than I could believe that these were space aliens coming in metal spaceships. I don't think that at all. But I really don't think they're human beings. I really don't.
Yeah.
I think they're actually. I think that whatever it is, it exposes itself to people in different ways at different times. And another thing that I know people are not going to like. People we'll shut off the podcast, but I think Bigfoot is actually part of this thing as well.
Yeah.
And when I started investigating UFO sightings, people would tell me about Bigfoot sightings that sometimes happened in close proximity to UFO sightings, and I would just delete that. Let's pretend that I didn't even hear that because that is ridiculous, And basically, it just eventually came to a point where I just couldn't deny it anymore. Sure. I couldn't deny it anymore. And I started to investigate these sightings where people saw Bigfoot and UFOs at the same time all the time. Here we are. So we're recording this in the Bridgewater Triangle. Bridgewater Triangle is this area in southeastern Massachusetts that is kind of a hotbed of paranormal activity and has been for a long time. And one of the things that's been reported in this area a lot is like Bigfoot type sightings. And I investigated a lot of Bigfoot sightings in this area. A simple fact is that there's not enough food, not enough area in the wintertime here to actually support some kind of population of hairy hominid creatures. It's just like, no way. So if we acknowledge that it's like actually kind of biologically impossible for these things to be real creatures, then we have like two possibilities, right? One possibility is that all these people are lying. I don't think that's the case at all. Evidence that they're telling the truth, I would point to from my investigations, was when I first started doing the UFO stuff, when I started doing Bridgewater Triangle stuff, I was only interested in UFOs in the Bridgewater Triangle. People would email me or contact me or tell me about Bigfoot stuff in the Bridgewater Triangle or around it, and I would just like
dismiss it.
I'd basically like put it in a file, you know, where I would just kind of like, okay, cool, thanks. I don't know what it is. Cool story. Thanks for sharing. But I didn't share it with anybody.
Yeah.
Until the time came that I was like, I'm going to like look at all of these things in the aggregate. I'm going to like stack up these files and read them all one after the other. And I'm looking at these things and it's like Copacut Road in Freetown, Copacut Road in Freetown, Copacut Road in Freetown, over and over. All different people, sightings at different times, different years, going back decades. No one had ever written about this. No one had ever talked about this. And it's like, there's nothing about that dirt road out there that is going to make you see something that isn't there, right? Yeah. So if there's not anything to it, why did all of these witnesses come up with the same street?
Yeah, over decades.
Over decades.
Yeah.
It wasn't and some would be like, well, Chris, they were fucking with you. It was like the same person appealing, but it's like, no, I'm telling you, I like talked to people. Like these people, the people who had sightings from decades ago, they were like really reluctant to talk about it. When you're investigating UFO sightings, I'm not trying to claim that I have some supernatural ability to tell when people are lying. But there are certain words that people use. There are certain phrases that people like go through when they're telling you about something that's really weird that they don't understand. And it's like, I'm not saying this is foolproof, okay? But you can get a sense of it if someone's telling the truth or not. If someone is talking to you about this weird thing and you have made a hobby out of talking to people about this weird thing every week, every month, there's like patterns, there's things like patterns, not just patterns of things that people see, but patterns of the way people's mind works when they're confronted with this thing for real, right? And when they start kind of telling you that they're going through this checklist in their mind or whatever, it's like, this guy's legit, right?
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah.
Right? I wouldn't bet my life on it, but like in the aggregate, right? So yeah, I think there is something to it. But like I say, if there is something to it and it's not an animal, then what is it?
Yeah.
I think it's like another guise of this same thing. And that it wants you to think that it's an animal. And it wants you to think that it's an alien. It wants you to think that it's a lot of different things for different cultures and different times. It wants you to think it's a fairy. It wants you to think it's a troll or a god, right? But it's something else. It's something else that we don't know what it is.
One question I did have before we kind of continue on. The night you were in your apartment in Austin and you could hear something move. And that's when you said, fuck this. Well, two questions. Like, one, how close were you to just saying fuck it and getting up and going to look?
I was a million miles away.
Million miles?
Never considered it for a second. I was just like, nope, that's a no.
Yeah.
Like, no. And it was, I almost felt like that was part of it, right? Where it's like, are you serious? Like, are you serious? It was like a shit test, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, you want to find out?
Right here, motherfucker. Yeah,
and I'm like,
yeah.
Turns out I don't.
Yeah. Did you ever regret not going?
Not for a second. I think I would have died if I opened that door.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that my girlfriend, from Berkeley, the thing that happened, right, when we were camping in the tent.
Yeah.
I felt so bad about that.
Sure.
She hit me up a few years later, and she said, Chris, we had fallen out of touch. We had a bad breakup. And we didn't talk anymore. She hit me up and she's like, listen, actually the way that we talked to each other again was through some weird thing that was like almost paranormal itself. I had a dream about her. It was a really nice dream where we were like in the back of a convertible, like on a highway and just like laughing and having fun on a summer day. I had talked to her for years. I woke up and I thought I like had this dream clearly in my mind, and I thought, I want to talk to her again. I didn't have her phone number, but I did know her AOL Instant Messenger screen name. I went downstairs, the place where I was living, I turned on the computer, I logged into AOL Instant Messenger, which I never logged into. And I immediately get a message. It's from her. And I'm like, I logged onto this to talk to you. She's like, I never log onto this. I logged onto this hoping to talk to you, like at the same time.
Sure, yeah.
She's like, I had a dream about you last night. And I'm like, I had a dream about you. It's like, what a crazy coincidence. So we start talking, we start chatting. Let's meet up. Let's catch up a little bit. So we like sit down and have dinner. She's like, listen, part of the reason why I wanted to talk to you, I still have bad dreams about that night in Berkeley. And I want to know what really happened. I've started to think that more happened than what I remember, which I had never suggested this to her. I was so mortified. I felt so guilty. I felt so afraid. You know, everything that I cared about or thought about was like collapsing around me as this was happening. Like, you know, I cared about this person a lot, and she didn't have anything to do with this.
Yeah.
And she's like, I want you to hypnotize me. I want to find out what happened. And I told her, no way, I'm not going to do it. She basically guilt tripped me. And she's like, I think something happened to me. I think it was kind of, you know, connected to you, maybe your fault. You owe it to me to do this. So I went to my house on the couch. She laid down. I did the hypnosis stuff. She was under hypnosis for like a second. Suddenly she sat up, covered her eyes with her hand. She said, no, 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 over and over, repeating no. I like, you know, calmed her down. She had spontaneously emerged from the hypnosis. She's covering her eyes with her hands the whole time. And I said to her, I said, well, what happened? She's like, I don't know. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I said, okay, we don't have to do it. I said, what happened in that 1 second? She said, well, I saw a bright light. And she turns to look at me, and her eyes are bright red bloodshot. Like, her eyes are super irritated, which is like a thing that anyone who's watched Close Encounters of the Third Kind knows is like associated with seeing the light from a UFO, right? And that's like she never wanted to talk about it again. And then she stopped talking to me again, and I haven't talked to her for all these years.
Wow.
Now, I told you that story about, you know, that night in Alston in my apartment, telling my girlfriend that if she looked behind me, she'd see a UFO, and looking behind and seeing it. So when she and I were still together, I would tell that story all the time, and she would corroborate it. Yeah, I saw it. I saw this triangular, these 3 lights, no other lights, you know, no blinking lights, no navigation lights, not an airplane. And we broke up, but stayed friends. And some years went by, and finally she said, you know what, Chris? I don't think that's what happened. I don't think there was anything there. I was just humoring you. There was like nothing there to be seen. And I mention that here kind of because I think she did see it. And I think it's easier for her to think that she didn't. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But the thing is, there are many aspects here. There are things that I've talked about here that there were other witnesses to who could corroborate it. And I am not going to invoke those people because I frankly am not interested in trying to convince anybody that this is true.
Yeah.
And the fact is, there are other people who witnessed this stuff who would probably like discredit this now and be like, well, it's not like how he said that it was, which is like, that doesn't bother me at all.
Well, you know, the thing is too, is like human memory is always,
sure.
You know, so like people like, yeah, I kind of remember something about that. I don't know if it was like this or whatever, you know, and so,
yeah.
You know.
I mean, even just like, but what if the thing that you remember is like proof of some kind of non-human intelligence?
Yeah.
Or not proof, but like, if you really believe it, then you have to believe that your boyfriend was able to somehow basically control UFOs with his mind or track UFOs with his mind. And like, if you believe that you dated a man who tracked UFOs with his mind, what is your reality? Right? It's like, you know, you either have to not believe your own eyes or, you know, or maybe your boyfriend was crazy, right? Or whatever. I mean, you know, who knows?
Well, there's just crazy things in the world that or with people that are unexplainable. Like even like the whole concept of like synchronicity. You both logged on at AOL. She ain't gonna deny that, or whatever.
It.
Like at the same time, after not talking for years,
coincidences, they happen.
Yeah,
you know, but stuff like this, with regard to the paranormal stuff, it like still happens to me sometimes. Several years ago, so I used to do like lectures about UFOs and stuff. I haven't done any in a long time, but there was a guy who was doing like a conference about like monster Bigfoot stuff, and he had a he had access to like a recording studio. And he said, hey, I want to record some really, really short podcast clips that I can release on social media over time to build up hype for my conference at which I was one of the lecturers. So I told him, sure. So we went and sat down just like this, just like you and I are sitting down. And we just recorded where it's like, okay, let's do one about ghosts. Let's do one about UFOs. Let's do one about Bigfoot. Let's do one about the Bridgewater Triangle. And I did all this stuff. And then I thought they were just like, the deal was they were just going to be released like social media, right?
Yeah, sure.
What he did was he actually he put them on a CD that he sold for a while. And I don't really discredit, I mean, I don't begrudge him this.
Yeah.
But if it had been pitched to me that we were going to do recording tracks for a Bridgewater Triangle CD, I would have like, I don't know, done some prep, right? Or like tried harder or whatever, you know. So this CD, he used to sell this CD, and it's like people have sold it. It's been out there for a while. I've actually never listened to it. That's the absolute truth. I think there's like some spooky music over it. I don't know. If the guy who made it is like listening, like I have anything against this guy, you know. I get it, right? But it was like not something I kind of wish my name wasn't on this thing.
Sure.
But
but just like you said, it's out of respect. Like we're recording a podcast, you know what it's going to come out. It's like I would never package this and put a soundtrack to it and score it and then try and sell it. You know, it's a little shitty.
The dude was a promoter who was like making money, like selling a product, and like I was working on a project with him, and like you know. I don't know. Paranormal stuff, you know, he recorded it, you know, it's kind of, I don't know, it's his recording.
Sure,
There's some overlap here with punk a little bit, right? Where it's like regular, like, sort of ethics of intellectual property, like, don't necessarily apply in some of these subcultures, right? Where it's like, you know, if I gave somebody shit for making a bootleg shirt of my band, like I would not do that. It's like, because I will bootleg your band. You know what I mean? And it's like, if the shoe had been on the other foot, I might have released a recording of this guy, right?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I later got involved, and we'll probably talk about this or touch on it at least a little bit later, but I got involved in collecting arrowheads. And there was a guy who lived in my town who had been a history teacher in the high school where I went to school, but he was never a teacher of mine. I knew him when I was in high school. And I knew that he knew about Native American stuff in the area where I lived in Franklin. So I called on the phone the Franklin Historical Society, and he picked up the phone. He didn't know who I was. This was 12 years after I graduated from high school.
Sure.
So he didn't recognize my voice. He didn't know who I was. And I said, hey, look, my name's Chris. I'm like interested in Native American stuff. Are there any arrowheads that are in like the holdings of the Franklin Historical Society? He said, well, I have some at my house that are from this town. So if you're interested in this stuff, you could come to my house and take a look at these arrowheads. I said, that'd be great. How about in half an hour? Sure. So I show up on this guy's doorstep and I knock on the door. The door opens. The dude takes one look at me and all the color drains from his face. He's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I just talked to you on the phone. It's like about the arrowheads. He's like, that was you? He's like, Chris, I remember you from high school. I was thinking of you so strongly today, all day. I was just thinking about you, remembering like conversations that we had. He's like, he just gestures for me to come inside. He's like, come inside. I walk into his house and I hear my own voice. It's that CD. He's listening to it. I said, how are you listening to the CD? He's like, I think this CD is interesting. I listen to it sometimes because I was thinking of you so strongly all day. I put the CD on and then you show up at my house. You show up on the front, you knock on my front door. What are the chances? I said, where did you get this CD? He said, I must have got it from you when you were in high school. I said, I graduated high school in 1998 and the CD came out in like 2005. Where did you get this CD? He said, I have no idea where I got this CD.
Yeah.
It's like, what are the chances?
Yeah. There's definitely, you know, the synchronicity stuff, deja vu stuff, whatever. There's a lot of.
I think there's some evidence that like we don't have an objective shared reality. I'm just going to come right out and say it. Like I don't really even know what is real, what isn't real, what this world is, what the nature of reality is. Obviously, I am not like a quantum physicist. You know, these are not things that I really think about all the time. But everybody that I know, as you go through life, you have these experiences that's just like, what the hell is that?
Yeah. Here's a thing. You know, whether you want to talk about it or not. Have you ever experimented with any like psychedelic or hallucinogenic?
I have never done any drugs.
No. Okay. So like I grew up like mostly straight edge, straight edge most of my life, right? I had one experience on mushrooms that like what you said just kind of resonated. And I was just like, I felt like I could see so say, you're looking at a TV and behind the TV, there's like pixels and tubes and this and that. Like I felt like I saw all of that stuff that was behind reality.
Well, a lot of people that I know, right, have done like a lot of like.
Yeah, sure.
I feel like if I did it, I would go insane. That's it. I just think
it's not for everyone.
It's not for me. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to know. Are there ways? Are there can psychedelics open doors of perception? They probably can. Those are doors that I just want to remain closed.
Sure.
I love my life now where I don't have monsters and space ships in my life, right?
Yeah.
And for a long time, I wouldn't tell this story to anybody. I didn't tell anybody this story for 10 years.
Yeah.
Finally, I opened up to some friends, and then I did a lecture one time where I told this whole story.
Sure. It's a heavy story, man.
It's crazy, and it's just I like to do lectures too, or I used to do these lectures where it's I'm going to talk about cryptozoology in Massachusetts. So I'm going to talk about Bigfoot sightings and other weird, unusual animals sighted in Massachusetts and stuff. And it's an interesting talk,
Sure.
Or I could talk about the history of UFO sightings in Massachusetts, and I could talk about that. And it's an interesting talk. The history of UFO sightings in Massachusetts goes back to the 1600s. The earliest recorded UFO sighting in North America was in Boston. It's a really cool case, and there's a lot of cases like that.
Yeah.
Or even just to talk about some of the cases that I investigated, just this guy saw this disc and, this person saw this, flying saucer or whatever, but it's and I could tell all those stories without telling that I myself had this thing. But people always ask, they say, have you had any experiences? And sometimes I tell people that I've never seen anything that I would investigate myself, right? And that's actually true. The UFO sightings that I mentioned where I said I saw lights in the sky, when people told me that they saw lights in the sky, I never investigated those cases because you can't ever really prove what that was or wasn't.
Sure, yeah.
Even that night with that girl in Alston, the thing that I saw that I was so excited about, that sphere of light, it's if someone told me that they saw that, I would think they saw a helicopter coming through the clouds and going back into the clouds. That's what I would think.
Yeah.
And then I can't prove it wasn't, right? But it wasn't.
Sure. Yeah. What would actually, when you were investigating then, what would be something that would warrant kind of further investigation versus something that would get shelved?
Basically, I tried to go with either daylight sightings of a structured craft or sightings by pilots or other trained observers where it was this person had some ability to measure this thing in relation to something else. Or what I called high strangeness cases, like what I mentioned before, the guy with the bog song and When a Man Loves a Woman. That stuff was A+ material for me,
sure.
Especially at the end. When I first started, I was looking for the structured, what we call a daylight disc type of a sighting. I saw a silver craft, or I saw a black triangle during the day. That was the stuff that I really liked because I thought that was an alien spacecraft, And then later when I became more into the more, I don't know, what I think is more real aspects of it, then it was okay, this high strangeness stuff, the onboard stuff, the abduction type stuff.
Yeah.
And just a quick note about the abduction stuff to touch on something that I said earlier. I actually don't think that people are being kidnapped by aliens. I think that people who have that experience volunteered for it before they were born. And I think that because that's what they told me. I don't know what any of that means. I know it sounds absolutely insane. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything today or ever, but I really think that there is some connection between us and this intelligence that people have. I don't know. I don't know. I struggle even to put this stuff into words because this stuff is so extremely weird. And my girlfriend, right? She had that sighting, that encounter that night in the tent. But I think that she and I dated because of this stuff. I don't actually think it happened because of me. I think we dated because she was this already, maybe.
It was kind of like predetermined.
Like, there's this, like, it would take me like a book the size of a dictionary to even begin to scratch the surface of this abduction thing. But I can't tell you a lot. When I would work with these people enough, it'd be like, I'm looking at my hand. They would say, I'm looking at my hand and it looks really strange. Okay, describe your hand. Well, it's an alien hand. I'm an alien, and it's like, this part of this abduction narrative doesn't make it into any of like the TV show stuff or like the bestseller books about it, because it's ridiculous. It's crazy. It's nonsense. But all of the serious people that I worked with, they came up with it on their own, separately. I know that it's possible to lead witnesses. I know that people who are hypnotized are incredibly suggestive to leading questions. And I can absolutely say, we didn't ask leading questions. They came out with that on their own over and over again. So, I don't know.
Yeah, that's tough, yeah.
It's super tough. Yeah. It's super tough. Some of the people that we worked with later formed a support group and were able to help other people who did this stuff. And I can't take any credit for them forming the support group or for the people that they helped. That was all them. But I am just really glad that I was like a part of that process, even for them. Yeah. For some of these women that had this encounter, that they were able to then help other people, because it's hard. It is hard for these people, super hard. And there's a lot of these people.
Yeah. What, I guess I've never been on any kind of investigation or with part of any regression analysis stuff. I saw that movie years ago that came out. I think it was called The Second Kind.
I know the movie you're talking about.
Where it was a weird Hollywood movie where they were doing regression analysis with not survivors, but like people, but then they also had like a little box within the frame that looked like a documentary, like real footage, but even that footage was fake. You know what I mean? But it was based on some book or something. Did you ever see that?
Yeah, I did. And it was really hard for me to watch because it hit too close to home.
That's what I was going to ask. Did it seem like pretty...
I literally don't even remember what the movie is called. I know exactly the movie that you're talking about. I watched it and it was incredibly difficult for me to watch, and I never thought about it again.
Yeah.
Because, I don't ever want to be in that situation ever again.
Sure. So, and I know we had stopped and paused for a second right when you were kind of talking about the Bigfoot stuff. Was there anything about that we didn't touch on that we left kind of
I mean, I could sit here and give you like a list by list catalog of like UFO sightings that I investigated that were like associated with Bigfoot sightings. I think it would become very boring. Sure. I mean, and anybody who's interested in that can find 100,000 sighting reports like that on the internet with a Google search. But it's like, to me, that's almost kind of a litmus test, because I'm going to tell you and everybody listening right now, the entire field of UFO study and investigation, in fact, the entire paranormal field, is full of absolute bullshit. It is absolutely full of charlatans, people who are promoting bad cases because it's like helps them to sell a book or whatever. And on some level, I actually don't begrudge these people this thing, but the people who are serious about this stuff, they're like, you never really hear about these people for the most part, because the shit that they're saying is so insane that no publisher is going to publish their book. Yeah. And so on some level, it's kind of like a litmus test when I talk to other people who are interested in UFOs, right? People who are serious, who like present themselves as ufologists or investigator or whatever. It's like, what do you think about the Bigfoot connection? And it's like, oh, I don't think there's anything. It's like, okay, well, you're like either not actually doing this stuff, or you're like denying it to yourself because it sounds ridiculous, right?
Or they just didn't find their way to it yet. Like,
maybe they will,
because you were at that point at one point.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But I mean, like, look, I mean, I used to speak at conferences. I've done a lot of documentary interviews. Some of these documentaries, never get made, right?
Sure.
But like, you get flown out to go somewhere and you talk to people, and I meet other people in this field. I mean, I've met a lot of the big, so-called big names or whatever. which I am not one of them, obviously. I've never published a book. I've never published anything on my findings. I wrote an entire book about the history of UFOs in Massachusetts. It's never been published. It's like literally written in a notebook with a pen, or loose leaf paper. I've never, and I probably never will publish this stuff. And I don't want to misrepresent myself either as being like some guy who's like, look, most of what I'm talking about is my life from more than 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this isn't part of my daily life anymore at all.
Sure.
And I don't want it to be, and I get it. Like, there's a lot going on now with UFOs that's in the news. And I am aware of it. I follow it basically with a casual interest level.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
but I'm not, like, doing this stuff anymore.
Yeah. Is that why you don't publish the book? Because you didn't just...
I don't... Look, I'm telling you, it hurts when you put time into something because you read a book about it and you thought that book was real, and then you actually get the original case file with the original witness interview transcripts and stuff, or the tapes even, and you listen to it and it's like, that's not what the book said at all.
Yeah.
And it's like, fuck.
Yeah.
Because, I did... I'm not going to say specific TV show names, but I've been on some various TV shows.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, if I told these people that I had proof that Christopher Columbus was an alien, I'd get my own show. That's what they want you to say.
Yeah.
And the people who will get close to saying that, the people who will get close to towing that line, they get more time on the show.
Yeah.
And they get more attention. And those people probably have a book to sell. Sure. And they sell more books that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's an industry.
Yeah, it is an industry, and you're not gonna sell a book telling people some kind of narrative that even you don't understand. But if you can package up something nice and neat where UFO aliens from space are abducting people to harvest their DNA to make alien human hybrids, that's pretty easy to understand. It's a pretty standard science fiction plot line. That's gonna sell.
Yeah.
But that's not how it is.
Sure. What how I first heard your name in the paranormal world was through that Bridgewater Triangle documentary, and you kind of talked about some Bigfoot stuff, some UFO stuff. What else have you kind of come across? Have you done any other general type of research out in the general? What's kind of some of the more serious or kind of compelling or strange stuff that you've kind of encountered or seen out there?
Well, I really, the Bridgewater Triangle is a real near and dear to my heart subject. I started interviewing people in the Bridgewater Triangle in 1996.
Okay, so right around this.
It was in 1993 that I got started with UFOs. In 1996,
it wasn't too long after,
there was an article in the Boston Herald with a guy named Joseph DeAndrade who was really instrumental in recording a lot of this information.
That's the guy that was he had drawings and everything.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
The Bridgewater Triangle concept was created by Loren Coleman, who's a cryptozoologist, in his book Mysterious America that came out, I think, in 1978. And then he collected a lot of really compelling material. He published his book, and then Loren Coleman, he continues to do his investigations and stuff, but he doesn't live here. He didn't focus on this area. It was just one of a lot of different areas that he was interested in. But you've got this guy, Joseph DeAndrade, who lived in Bridgewater, who created this paranormal investigation organization that was mostly just him or maybe him and a friend. But he was collecting a lot of stories. He was putting up flyers in local bookstores. If you've seen Bigfoot, I want to hear about it. And there was an article about him in the Boston Herald in 1996, and that's the first time I had ever heard about the Bridgewater Triangle. And so I came to Bridgewater. I met with him. I joined the Paranormal Investigation Organization. And at first, as I say, I was only interested in the UFO stuff. But eventually, I couldn't dismiss the fact that, take a place like, Assawampset Pond in Lakeville, right? You've got UFOs that are seen over the pond. You've got these weird Native American ghost stories abounding around the pond. You've got weird footprints that are being found in the farm fields near the pond, or Lake Nipponicket in Bridgewater. You've got UFO sightings. You've got people seeing monkeys that live on islands in Lake Nipanicket. I mean, I've got people telling me they're seeing something like the Loch Ness Monster out there, submarines, like phantom fires, ghosts, so much. And it's just like, all right, this isn't a coincidence, at some point. And so, I will say this. I get contacted about the Bridgewater Triangle all the time by people making TV shows and stuff. And what all of those people want, they all want the same thing. They want a witness who will go on record and say, I saw something in the last year and a half. And I don't have anybody like that at all. Yeah. I mean, when I used to have stuff like that, like in the 90s via email, when I was investigating UFO and Bigfoot sightings out here, people would say, I was drinking with my friends and I saw Bigfoot, and here's where I saw it. I was out making out with my boyfriend. We were doing drugs or whatever. And I saw this thing. Now, with the UFO stuff, when someone tells me I was drinking and I saw it, I scratch it off. And so someone tells me they were doing drugs and I saw it, it's like I don't even pay any attention to it. But the thing is like, let's pretend for a moment that Bigfoot is some real monster that lives in the Hockomock Swamp and that shambles around the edges of the swamp, looking for food in the dark of night. Like, who's going to see that? Your local upstanding businessman is asleep. Your regular family people are in their regular family homes, but kids at the drinking spot are going to be the people who are going to see it if it's real.
Sure, yeah.
So I would follow up on those cases with the Bigfoot stuff, and I would find, areas where it looked like something had passed through. I mean, I found some evidence that later turned out to be not evidence. I mean, it's a long story, But, I don't really have that stuff anymore. I have some occasionally from time to time. And part of that, yes, is that I'm not really super active in this stuff anymore.
Sure.
But another part of it is something that I've seen repeated over and over and over again, where when investigators move into an area, seriously, the stuff stops happening. Now, you could take that as evidence that this whole thing is hot air and bullshit. And I wouldn't blame anybody for taking that attitude about it. And then there's another thing with the Bridgewater Triangle where, look, this area is getting developed every day.
Yeah.
Places that I used to go and investigate Bigfoot sightings where you would stand there and look around and be like, oh, yeah. No, seriously, a family of Bigfoot creatures could totally live out here. There's nothing. You're looking at a map and there's nothing around. Yeah. It's just desolate wilderness. And now those same places, it's like a weed dispensary, a strip club. You know what I mean? A suburban
solar farm.
Yeah, totally. The Bridgewater Triangle is getting developed, and it has lost some of its charm to me a little bit of a feel. Just because it's been developed so much, it's sad to see it. But the Hockomock Swamp, the heart of the swamp, it can't be developed. It won't be developed. That's the center of this whole Bridgewater Triangle phenomenon. Is this unbelievably unique, super special, massive wilderness swamp that we have here. Which was occupied. The edges of it were occupied by prehistoric people tens of thousands of years ago through to King Philip's War period. And there's just crazy folklore about this swamp that continues to this day. And I mean, I don't care who you are. If you go out there to the swamp, there's ways you can access it. There's a railroad bed that goes through it. There's high tension wires that go through it. And you can walk along there and it's if a dinosaur came crashing through there, you wouldn't even blink an eye. I mean,
you wouldn't be surprised.
It's crazy out there. I love it. I love it.
I haven't been out there yet, but I know my Joe we were talking about earlier. He goes out there. He'll go fishing and stuff or do different things. And he said he related a story too that even when he was going out there one time to go fishing or somewhere out near there, and he was talking to a cop because the cop's like, "What are you doing out?" He's like, "Oh, I'm going to go fishing." And the guy's like, "Yeah, just stay away from that little island right there because there's a lot of shit that goes on over there."
Local people know about it. And I'll tell you, I would just, I used to, and I still do this to an extent because I go to the Bridgewater Triangle now a lot. I look for arrowheads. I look for Native American stone tools. I find archaeological sites, some of which have never been documented before. Find out when people lived there. I'm really interested in this archaeology aspect of it now. Most of the tools that I find are between 3,500 and 5,000 years old. Yeah. But I'll go out there and sometimes I'll just take a walk and I'll find people out there who are hunting or fishing or they're on a four-wheeler or they're just outdoor enthusiasts and say, hey, do you come here very often? You ever have any weird experiences out here? And it's they do. They have all kinds of weird experiences.
Yeah.
The number one thing that people tell me is that they have stories that center around this feeling of being watched. And that is just so common. And I don't really get that other places really like this.
Yeah.
You know?
But do you think it's just because you're kind of in the middle of like a creepy forest, a swamp or something, or all the lore around it, you know?
It is a special place.
Yeah.
And it does have this lore that goes back a long time. So it's almost like if this stuff wasn't there, maybe people would come up with stories about it, you know? But so this is kind of like a different way of looking at things, where I used to be like a scientist trying to find out what UFOs were. And now I'm still interested in these paranormal topics, but it's not as like a scientist anymore. It's like, I like these stories because they are fun stories. It's fun to speculate about. It's spooky. It's creepy. You know, it's interesting to think, what if? But even then, at some point, you have to ask yourself, is this real? You know, and that's where it starts to kind of unravel a little bit.
Sure, yeah. But it's crazy too, like an area like the Freetown Forest or whatever, you know, stuff, Bridgewater Triangle. It's just almost relentless with the amount of stuff. There's like the Phoenix, the fucking Puckwudgies, the fucking Bigfoot, the fucking this, and then even like all the crazy like cult, like satanic activity in the 70s. It was like there's definitely a draw, some kind of weird fucking draw there, you know?
Cattle mutilations, giant snakes and turtles, these giant birds. I mean, it's just like, you're right, it's relentless. It's like there's nothing that isn't there, right? People seeing aliens on the street, like, you know, ghost photographs, like, you know, the Freetown Fall River State Forest, the ledge, and like everyone who seems to go there, even when I go there, I have like weird, even now a little bit, you know, it's like, geez, my phone battery just went from like 38% to 0. Like, why did that happen? You know, photos don't come out or whatever it is, you know, everyone has a story like this. It's cool. And, there's something special about it. Something I think about a lot with regard to the Bridgewater Triangle is I think about an email that I got from a guy who was like, he was like a psychotherapist. And he's like, I've worked all over the country. I've worked on Native American reservations. I've worked from coast to coast. And I have never encountered so much abject human misery as in the Bridgewater Triangle. It's like, I don't know, you know, there's something weird going on. Sure. I think there is. Yeah.
You know what gets me is like the weird like cult or satanic stuff. Like, I saw a picture. You know, they were talking about the they found like that little like kind of hut that was like built into like a hill kind of.
Yeah, Carl Drew's bunker or whatever it was. Yeah.
That was the only, like, I literally saw a picture of that and my hair like stood up in the back, like, and especially when they were like, you know, they found like a child size like stool in there and stuff, and I was like, well, look, that's just like creep factor. That's human creep factor to me. You know what I mean?
The Freetown Fall River State Forest has all kinds of, you know, they find bodies in there because of its proximity to like Brockton and areas of like gang activity and high crime and stuff. And, you know, there's a guy who's in prison now for kind of a 80s satanic panic, like series of murders. And it's like a lot of people think he's innocent. That is its own set of stuff. And even like that cult stuff. I mean, there's police officer who was tasked with investigating the cult stuff. He has a lot to say about it. Other people think that guy is like full of shit, you know, and it's just like, I think it's very interesting. The stories are great. I love the stories, and I do not ask myself if it is real because I frankly don't even care. I think they're cool stories.
I've never, you know, with the COVID stuff, my gym was shut down for like 3 months. I live in Freetown. I was going to the forest every day, and I was just having pleasant hikes and being at peace. Like, but you know, it's during the day, and I'm on major routes, major trails. The only thing that's ever happened to me in the area was coming home one night, and I know this sounds like 3 a.m. type of thing, but I was coming back. It's probably on Chase Road. You know where like those farms are, like the old farm on Chase Road, like You know what I'm talking? And there's an old cemetery. I was coming. It was like 3 a.m. And for everyone that knows me, I wasn't fucked up. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't. You know, I was pretty sober. Well, I was really sober. I wasn't. And I was coming home. It was like three or so in the morning, and like literally 2 orbs shot out in front of me, like little danced in front of my windshield for a second, and then took off. Cool. And I was like, I like literally stopped. And I like backed up, and I was like moving the truck because there's no one on the road. And I'm like, all right, if I moved like the angle this way, am I seeing any weird light reflections? But like the way they moved, it was like they shot out and they kind of danced around in front of the windshield like that, and then just
That's cool.
Took off across the street. It's the only thing I've ever saw, any weird thing that's ever happened to me.
How long ago was that?
Within maybe like a year ago.
That's cool. Yeah, so see, and I've collected stories like that going back to the 1970s.
Yeah.
You know, so that's something that has gone on here for years. It's still going on. You know, there is still paranormal stuff going on in the Bridgewater Triangle for sure.
Yeah, it's just, and you know, people, swamp gas, whatever. I'm like, I don't think so, man. I wasn't in a swampy area. I was like on a main road. Like,
I mean, what is it? You know, you misidentified a moth, right? Like, like what is the counter? You know, some kind of unknown form of lightning. I mean, you have to stretch, or you're lying, right? So it's like these are the choices.
I get nothing from lying about that. You know what I mean?
That's the same the stuff I'm talking about.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like I've got, you know, I don't enjoy like telling some bullshit lie to people.
Yeah,
for no reason.
And I know you said you're kind of only following things like in a more fun type of manner now. Before we get onto other stuff like archaeology or whatever, but like, what do you think about some of the recent developments in like the UFO stuff where like, you know, a month or so ago, the Pentagon is like, well, we do admit that there are things that we can't explain. And they've kind of officially admitted the existence of UFOs, you know, under the guise of like, you know, not saying what it is. But then recently, like just like in the last week, there was something from one of one of the contractors or whatever was saying, you know, we definitely have something that was not made here.
Sure, I did see that. I don't know. I guess I'll believe it when I see it. You know, I've seen these tantalizing stories from the government for a long time. At one time, I became convinced that the government actually didn't know anything about UFOs. You know, I think that they literally, you know, they investigated UFO sightings. The United States Air Force did via Project Blue Book, which was terminated in 1969.
Sure, yeah.
You know, after the Condon report on unidentified flying objects, I think it come out a University of Colorado study that just concluded that these things aren't a threat to national security. And I basically came to take the government almost at like face value, where it's like, all right, well, they literally investigated these things for decades and figured out that they couldn't figure out what they were, but they weren't a threat to national security, so they moved on. Yeah. You know, but I will say the government uses UFO sightings as cover for their own weird shit.
Sure, of course,
for their aircraft stuff. And
it seems like that would make sense. Like, you know,
I mean, there are documents, declassified documents, where they talk about doing this.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like, oh, you know, a weird aircraft was discovered or was seen. Well, it must have been a space alien.
Yeah,
you know, when in reality, it's them trying out their black budget projects, their drones and stuff, their unmanned vehicles. You know, and so I almost think that if UFO sightings came to a complete halt, right? If UFOs, whatever they were, totally ceased, then I think the government would make fake ones. I really do.
Yeah, it's crazy because, like, you know, obviously you've probably seen the footage that was taken by the naval pilots and stuff. Like, yeah, just interesting.
The photo is compelling. You know, the video is compelling. The thing I would say about that is, like, the way that thing looks in the video. You know, I investigated some sightings in the 90s that were taken with camcorders that had similar
like resolution.
Shapes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it had some similar resolution for sure, but the shapes were similar. And eventually I came to find out that these were basically videos made of stars and planets. And the apparent shape and structure of these things was caused by the light reflecting inside the camera itself. And what you were actually seeing is like a reflection of elements inside the like focusing thing of the camera.
Sure.
And I'm looking at that Navy, you know, released video, and it's just like, I don't know, it looks like it was taken with a potato. You know, it's got this shape to it that is, to me, very reminiscent of these camera internal reflection videos that I kind of discarded in the 90s. So I don't know.
And that's, you know, kind of like, not to harp on this, but that's kind of what freaked me out about those orbs, because, like, you know, I've taken pictures before and you'll see orbs of light in your photos. I've never seen anything like, it's just pitch black and there's two fucking glowing white balls going like this and then taking off. Like, like dancing and then like,
a lot of those still photos with the orbs, you know, it's like dust.
It's just dust.
But it's like some of them probably are not. You know, I've taken some photos that have really weird lights in them that I can't really explain via, you know, as dust or as reflections or lens flare. These were things that I learned about as a UFO investigator. You know, what do they look like? In what ways can this appear? What causes these things? You know?
Yeah. How did you get involved with the Ancient Aliens TV show?
Well, I had written so basically, towards the end, of my time as a UFO investigator in the late 90s, I was kind of going in two different directions. I was looking at these high strangeness cases, and I was also really interested in historical cases. And I think part of the reason for that is just I've always been interested in like any kind of history.
Yeah.
The idea of archival research really appeals to me, and I was doing it. I was going into libraries and just going through massive amounts of microfilm and old files and old newspapers, trying to find these reports of cases that had slipped through the radar. Basically, for people who aren't UFO buffs themselves, the modern era of UFO sightings began in 1947 with the UFO sighting over Mount Rainier in Washington by a pilot named Kenneth Arnold that was very widely reported. In the spring of 1947, it was like a news sensation. And then after his sighting...
That was before Roswell?
It was just before Roswell, yeah. I think it was like June 1947 was Kenneth Arnold, and then July 1947 was the UFO crash at Roswell, supposedly, right?
Yeah.
So this 1947 thing, UFO sightings have kind of continued unabated, more or less, depending on who you talk to or how you want to categorize this to this day. But I became really interested in UFO sightings from before 1947, which there were a lot. So I did a lot of research on that, and there was a UFO sighting in Boston in 1638, I believe, that has very strong parallels to modern so-called abduction cases and kind of high strangeness cases of today. I mean, it's the wording obviously is these people are describing this stuff with the vocabulary of the 17th century, but they're describing something that sounds like a UFO with landing gear. They describe this thing as being in the shape of a pig, which sounds ridiculous, but if you think about it as being like an oval-shaped fuselage with the pig legs as landing gear, right? It kind of makes sense. So I kind of wrote a fun article about it where it was here's the original report, and here's kind of a interpretation of it in the terms of modern UFO sightings. And that article that I wrote, I published it on my website, and it wound up getting widely republished on the internet, and it's been in a whole bunch of places over time.
Sure.
So I got an email from someone saying, we're doing a show called Ancient Aliens. We want you to maybe help us out with it. Can we talk on the phone? I said, sure. They called and they said, listen, we're trying to find somebody who can talk about UFO sightings in colonial America. And everybody that we talk to, they say, talk to you. You're the only guy. I said, well, I probably am the only guy. UFO sightings in colonial North America is not something that is
it's not. There's no degrees in that.
There's no degrees in it. There's no money to be made in it. You're not going to have a blockbuster bestseller about UFO sightings in old timey days. But I was really interested in this stuff.
Sure, yeah.
I said I could help you. I can give you information. They're like, well, we want someone to talk about it on the show. I said, I can talk about this. They said, listen, we've done some research. If we share our research with you, will you go over it and let us know if you'd feel like you'd be willing to talk about this on camera? I said, sure. So they sent me their research. It was just my article, And so I said, yeah, I'll talk about this. I wrote all of that.
Yeah.
And they were like, great. So, I was on Ancient Aliens talking about that, and they asked me if I could talk about other things. Some of them were things that I kind of am a sort of an expert in, right? Other things I didn't know a goddamn thing about.
Yeah.
But they sent me the questions in advance because they already, here's the deal with TV. They already have written all of the shit. They just need a talking head to say the soundbite that they need to plug in at the moment that they need. So they just need to find a talking head to make that soundbite. So this is how I wound up being on the History Channel, giving a biographical sketch of Abraham Lincoln or Thomas Jefferson, right? Where it's which blows my mind sometimes when you watch the show, because it's like me talking about Thomas Jefferson, and then it cuts to a little brief clip from a guy who wrote the critically acclaimed biography, a guy who spent his life studying Thomas Jefferson. It's how am I even on TV adjacent to this guy?
Yeah. No, it's crazy, man. Yeah, and you still doing that?
I have stopped answering emails from people about TV shows for the most part because if it was the right kind of thing, I think that I would. I mean, I've done it. I did some last year. I was flown out to California. I did some interviews for some TV stuff, a different show on the Travel Channel. Yeah. I'll do that kind of stuff, but I've become really picky and choosy.
Sure.
And frankly, I probably don't respond to 75% of the inquiries that I get now because I don't know. I like talking about it, but it has to be. I like to talk about it now with like a historical folklore, especially if someone wants to talk about like archaeology stuff. Yeah. Like I'm all about talking about that stuff. If I can be on TV talking about arrowheads and Native American stuff, I'll talk about UFOs all day to get the 5 minutes of talking about the arrowheads on TV.
Yeah. Now, what? But I definitely want to get over to that. But as far as like historical, colonial American UFO kind of things, like what have been some of the main kind of highlights or like some of the hardest hitting ones for you that you've come across? Because I know you see that stuff all the time. Like even in like, you know, all over the country, you see stuff like sometimes it's not the colonial stuff because that we were the only ones around back then, but you know, but like even in old Texas, like 1800s, you hear about stuff or whatever. But like, what have been some of the more New Englandy, like colonial, like revolutionary or pre-revolutionary war era, like stuff that
there's so much of it. You know? Is it really? When you're looking at the annals of this stuff, which few people ever really look at, right? Because it's like almost boring in a way to try to read, you know, the chronicles of the first governors of Massachusetts Bay Colony and stuff like that. You know, but when you go through their writings, in between the stories about bounties on wolves and you know the house that got burned by Indians, there's like we also saw this like really weird light that we couldn't figure out, you know? And it's like you would almost think that they would write about it being like, well, it was a sign from God or something, but they're not even saying that. They're just like, this was what was observed, it was reported, we don't know what it was, you know, just writing it down, moving on. And it's very similar to modern UFO type stuff.
It's crazy, huh?
Yeah. And then, of course, later, you've got these like airship waves in the late 1800s and then again around the turn of the century in the early 1900s where you've got these massive sightings where dozens or hundreds of people are seeing these phantom airships over Massachusetts. And you read the newspaper articles and it's like, oh, someone's going to admit what it is. You know, someone's going to step forward and say that they're flying these things. There's some incredible inventor who's been showing off his invention and we're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And then it never does.
Yeah. It's fucking crazy. You know, I do watch, I haven't watched it recently, but I did watch that show Ancient Aliens for a while. And one thing I always liked was when they would go back and show like artwork from different times in history. Like I'm talking about like, you know, Renaissance paintings or, you know, like things like that. I'm not talking about like, you know, Aztec and Mayan stuff. And there's always, you know, they'll show these pictures and there's like it looks like a saucer, like painted in it. That's fucking crazy.
I love that stuff. I think it's really fun to speculate about that stuff.
But you know, who knows what the fuck's going on?
Who the hell knows? There's no way of knowing. It could be almost anything. You know, but it is cool to look at it and be like, what the hell is that? Why would that be there? It's like a prosaic scene of like, you know, the baby Jesus or farmers working or whatever it is. And then it's like in the background, it's like, what the fuck is that? And it's deliberately painted in there. You know, someone took time to detail this UFO-looking thing, and it's like, why would they have painted that?
It's fucking bizarre.
And I like the show Ancient Aliens. You know, I'm not going to badmouth the show. You know, I've seen a lot of. Look, people have asked me if everything in the show is true. Obviously, it's not. The show is entertaining. It's about speculation. It's about speculation about history. I think all of that stuff is fun.
Yeah.
You know, recently, someone asked me if I thought that Ancient Aliens was racist because, you know, because like it's white people saying that brown people couldn't have built pyramids, but that's not what the show is about. No. That's not what the concept is about. I mean, so much of it is the stuff like what we're talking about, like art that just has this enigmatic thing, or and it doesn't matter who painted it, what their race was. It's just weird, you know.
Yeah, I always found it interesting because you know I've read the Zachariah Stitchin stuff with the Anunnaki or whatever, or the Von Daniken stuff. Like, it is just an interesting theory. Like, and it's
like a thought exercise.
Yeah,
you know, it's like okay, and this ties in a little bit with the arrowheads because I'm really interested in native archaeology. There is no history really, right? It's all prehistoric cultures who didn't leave behind a written record. So all we have left is the stuff that's in the ground. And we can dig it up. We can find it on the surface of the ground, which is what I do. You can find out how old this stuff is, but you can never find out You can never find out what these people's daily life was really like. Even if you know what they ate, even if you know how they buried their dead, even if you know exactly what kind of tools that they used, you can't really know what, like I say, even if you find the remains of their homes and everything, it's like what their day-to-day really was like, what they really believed, what their language really sounded like when you're talking about something from 5,000 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a total mystery. And it's like that with so many aspects of history. It's like that with aspects of our own history, even in America. Nobody really knows, as far as I'm aware, unless something has come out in recent years, no one really knows how Americans in the 1700s wiped their ass, what they wiped their ass with. It was never written down.
Yeah, why would it be?
Why would it be? Yeah. And it's like, we don't really know how they wiped their asses, and everybody did this every day, and we don't know what they really used exactly.
Well, that was one of my only bones to pick with archaeology when I was a student and stuff. Everyone would be like, well, this is what they had. How do you fucking know?
You don't know.
You can speculate. But people would talk with such authority sometimes.
Sure.
Like, this is what they did, and this is like, no, that's what you think they did. Like,
right.
And I wasn't being a
true,
dick
man.
about it. But
Our
it's just
understanding of prehistoric Native Americans has changed so much in the last 100 years. It was only a few decades ago. There are archaeologists still alive now who are writing books saying that prehistoric people arrived in North America like 3,000 years ago or something. And then it got pushed back to 10,000 years ago, 12,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago, and now there's stuff that's like way older than that. That's still being kind of evaluated and studied, but no, I mean, it's like mostly, so what I do is I go to places where there has been geological change that's taking place, so like erosion and stuff like that, where Native American people used to live, which there's certain types of places, certain types of soil, certain types of geological settings, within proximity to water, certain types of features or resource zones that they like to use. And I just look at the ground, and I try to find, what I'm really looking for is I'm looking for chips of stone that are left behind from them making tools. And where I find those chips of stone, that's where I know, okay, this is an archaeological site. I'll collect some of those chips as evidence, and I'll look very closely, and I'll spend a lot of time there very carefully searching, and I find the tools that they left behind, the arrowheads and stuff like that. And the overwhelming majority of the sites that I go to that I've discovered are in southeastern Massachusetts, and they are basically almost all, with some exceptions, but most of them are from the same culture. And it was a culture that made tools out of quartz. And they lived here between 3,500 years ago and 5,000 years ago. And 3,500 years ago, they basically disappeared. And they were replaced by other people that may have come from a different part of what is now North America. And they had a totally different lifestyle. And they lived in different places. And they ate different types of food. And there were much less of them, much fewer of them. So what happened 3,500 years ago, where this population that had been there for centuries, that had dominated this landscape for centuries, just disappears and is replaced with a different people? Like, was there a war? Was there a famine or a plague or what?
Yeah.
And no one will ever know.
Yeah. My uncle lived in Little Compton, Rhode Island, and he lived across from a farm, and he would just go out there. He had a massive collection of arrowheads because they're tilling the soil and stuff all the time. So stuff would just turn up all the time. He had everything. He had a huge, a huge collection of arrowheads and musket balls.
Wow, that's really cool.
And it's like, and he never stopped finding stuff. He moved eventually, but the whole time he was there, he'd just go, I'm going to go walk the farm, and he'd always come back with something.
That's really cool. I have a friend who does metal detecting, and the stuff that he finds is really cool. Revolutionary War era stuff, lots of 18th century stuff. I mean, shoe buckles, musket balls, old flat pewter buttons. And it's just, there's tons and tons and tons of this stuff, and we step on it every day. I mean, where we're sitting right now, the highway that goes by this place was almost certainly a road in colonial times. In fact, there's a spot that's probably 2 miles away from where we're sitting right now where I have stone tools from there.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just it's crazy how much is just in the ground. I always thought archaeology was cool, but you need a lot of patience.
I wanted to pursue archaeology as like a career, even after. So I never actually went to college. I graduated from high school after having been kicked out of high school because I was like a punk who was angry and creating problems for everybody. I did wind up graduating from high school, and then I thought, okay, well, I'll go to college eventually, So after I was out of high school for a few years, I started really looking seriously at archaeology. And I think there was like one specific thing that made me want to not be an archaeologist. And what it was they were doing, I think they were constructing a new parking lot at like a university near here. And the area where the parking lot was going to be was an area that had proximity to wetlands and had a lot of other aspects of it that made people think it's very likely that this was a Native American habitation site. So they gave a call for basically applications. Send in your resume. We need to do an archaeological survey of this before we destroy it forever. And the resumes were posted publicly, and you could look at them and see them. And I remember looking at one, and it was this guy who had done tons of digs. His experience was unbelievable in archaeology. I mean, he had written a whole bunch of papers that were published in a variety of different peer-reviewed journals. He had contributed to an archaeology textbook. You know, he had all of these certificates. He had worked in all of this stuff. And then at the bottom of the resume, it's like work experience. And it's like 1996 to present, package handler, FedEx. And it's just like, fuck.
Yeah, man. If you... The problem with a lot of these disciplines is if you don't want to play the game in academia, there's not a lot of options out there. Hence why I'm running a tattoo shop and a motorcycle shop, dude. You know what I mean? Like,
it's like you got to pay the bills. Yeah. You know, it's like archaeology is cool, but like I didn't want to go to school. I mean, this guy had like, you know, all these degrees and stuff. Like the amount of money that this guy had spent to be an archaeologist, and he was like busting his ass moving boxes around, you know, with high school dropouts, and it's like, I don't know. And another, similarly, I looked at doing antique textile restoration. I collect old clothes. I collect like World War II uniforms and stuff. I'm really, really interested in the material culture of previous generations. I'm really interested in textiles specifically. And antique textile restoration sounds absolutely fantastic to me, to just be able to take these incredibly historically important pieces and help conserve them.
Sure.
You know, and it's like, how do you become a professional antique textile restorer? You can go to college for 4 years or for 6 years, get a degree in get a degree in textiles, right? With your degree in textiles, you can get a 6-figure job working in a textile factory, or you can compete for unpaid internships in textile restoration.
Sure. It's crazy, man. I get it. Absolutely. And, you know, we talked, you know, before, I had a little pathway in anthropology that I had to leave because it was like, there was no way to survive on it, you know? Sure. And it was like, you know, so it was like, oh, well, you know, and then I just do the medical stuff and, you know, and then got out of that too. But
I've got like a really sweet situation now. I work part-time only. I work with my dad. He has his own business that my grandfather actually like built up starting back in 1952 or something, where we repair machines that do induction heating. So it's for like brazing, soldering, annealing, heat treating and stuff. It's basically uses an electromagnetic field to make metal hot, red hot, isolated area really quickly. And I actually wish I had started working for him back when I was in high school, because I could have learned so much more.
Sure.
But I only work part-time, and then the rest of my time I like have a million different side hustles, you know, where I like get a little bit of money here and there. But it's great. It gives me the flexibility to do the stuff that I want to do, to pursue my own interests and passions. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm interested in that I am able to get like a little bit of money from. Like I fix typewriters. I fix up old cameras and sell them. I can like fix and sell vintage fountain pens and stuff. I'm really interested in all that kind of stuff. So, you know, there's always I'll make a little bit of money here and there doing that stuff, and it adds up.
Yeah. And you know, it's kind of archaeology in a way, you know, except that, you know, it's not as old as what people think of, you know, when they think of that stuff.
These items have stories, you know, and when I'm going into someone on Facebook Marketplace has a typewriter for sale, an old typewriter, and to go there and get it out of their barn, and it's covered with dust, and there's a story about how this thing was used in a newspaper in 1920, you know, and there's other stuff maybe that I can get, or even just going to antique stores. It's like I love the love finding stuff. I love interacting with history. That's what I really love. And when I'm out somewhere next to some desolate stream, and I look down on the ground and there's an arrowhead there, you know, a stone tool that was made by a hunter 5,000 years ago, and I am the first person to touch this thing for 5,000 years. It's like an unbelievable feeling. But it's, you know, similarly, if I go to an antique store and there's some historically important thing that has been misidentified or that's just kind of lost in the shuffle with a lot, a table full of knickknacks, you know, but there's one thing there that's from the Civil War, you know, or even from World War I or something, you know. I love that experience.
Sure. What's been kind of one of your best finds in that type of way?
I collect stuff related to World War II specifically, and I've just had some unbelievable, you know, finds. I actually, you know, I bought a piece of cloth insignia out of a bin where everything in the bin cost $1, and it was a special piece of insignia for the guards at Hitler's headquarters, and it was used. It was removed from a uniform. So it's like, this thing was at Hitler's headquarters, you know, and I bought it for $1, you know, and of course a lot of people would find that thing really distasteful, right?
Sure, but you know what I always tell people in that regards is like, no, one of our guys physically fucking removed that from one of them guys
how it came here 100%.
And brought it the fuck over here. It's not like you went over to Germany and found that at the fucking thrift store. It's like you found it here. That was a trophy, you know what I mean? That was a battle trophy. That dude that brought it here probably fucking murked that dude and was like, this is mine.
Very likely.
You know,
but I mean, it's unbelievable what GIs brought back after World War II. I have whole like sets of maps that I bought. I have a whole set of maps that I bought from a specific military unit that was involved with like radar tracking of American bombers and American military activities. It was like a German unit, right? But it's like these maps are an incredible piece of history, like that show day to day what the situation was on the ground for these people. And it was just like, I got it out of a bunch of crap, you know, random papers. And it's like, sometimes I get kind of, you know, I don't know. Sometimes it's easy to think, okay, everything, all the knowledge in human history is on the internet, right? But it's not. There's like a lot of stuff that only exists in crumbling, you know, newspaper articles, in physical, you know, paper that's, you know, that's fading away. And I try to make all my stuff accessible as much as I can, whether it's arrowheads, whether it's any other kind of historical memorabilia. I try to reach out, like the arrowhead stuff. I talk to archaeologists all the time. I talk to professionals all the time. I show them pictures of the stuff. I show them maps of where I find it and stuff, because look, I could drop dead, and part of this whole thing for me is like, I want these. If you're
finding that stuff on the surface, imagine what's there if someone did a proper dig, you know,
right? 100%, you know, and or even if where I find it is disturbed, 10 feet away is the undisturbed original ground surface from prehistoric times, and it's like, what's there? You know, what information is there? I'll tell you, I've got archaeologists that I talk to, retired archaeologists, who were telling me to dig stuff up. They're like, I'll show you the maps, go dig it. It's like graves. There's information there, you know. I never, ever do. I've never dug.
Sure. It's just because archaeologists aren't, there's no one interested in that, or there's just so much. Things have all
changed, you know, and what archaeologists will do now, a lot of them, they have their reasons for doing this, but they'll go and they'll dig a few test holes, and they'll find a few arrowheads, and they'll figure out who lived in a particular area, what culture lived there, and when they lived there, and then that's it. They're done with it. Right? But obviously, there's a lot more there.
Sure.
I think part of their rationale is that if they just leave that stuff in the ground, that future archaeologists who have better technology will be able to come. But the reality is, I see known sites that I know that are in the state files getting bulldozed every month.
Yeah.
You know, half of all the archaeological sites in Massachusetts are destroyed every 10 years.
Sure.
And it's like, you know, there's a lot of sites that I have collected arrowheads at where probably the only record of what was there is in like freezer bags in my house of stone chips and flakes and some tools or broken tools. Yeah. You know, and everything else has been bulldozed into oblivion because now it's a shopping mall or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. And I think in those cases, like, I get, and that's always been a tenet of archaeology, is like, don't dig the whole site, because leave it for people down the future when they have better methods. I get that. And I always thought that was kind of a noble cause.
Sure.
But at the same time, if they're going to be if they're going to be fucking bulldozing it to put a fucking parking lot for a fucking Walmart, get in there and get everything.
I agree.
You know what I mean? Get in there.
There's so much development happening all the time.
Sure.
You know, and it's just, there's a lot of stuff that's just getting destroyed. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've found arrowheads, you know, within sight of a new foundation going in or something. And it's like, okay, maybe those arrowheads aren't going to necessarily be destroyed, but the context is destroyed.
Yeah,
the features that they were a part of, the hearths,
and
the post holes.
The only time they'll stop is if it's some kind of burial ground, and then they
you got to be lucky.
Yeah,
if the bulldozer operator and the person doing it are honest,
and they see,
there's money in all of this stuff, you know.
You don't want to be the guy that holds up production, you know what I mean? And
there's a $1 billion subdivision going in, and you've got a skull in your bucket of your excavator, and it's up to you. What do you do next? Do you tell someone, or do you bury that thing?
Yeah,
you know.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, you know, one of the other things I know that you were interested in for a while, I don't know if you're still doing, was stone structures.
I'm definitely into that stuff big time. I mostly got into that stuff right after the UFO stuff, right after I got out of doing the UFO stuff like almost full time. And part of the reason for that, so what we're talking about here is we're talking about above ground stone structures that are in New England. They're all over New England. A lot of them are like stone chambers. So it's like you go into a little hole in the earth and then you're in sort of a man-made cave underground. But there's all kinds of structures. There are walls, there are stone piles. Nobody knows for sure who built them. Nobody knows how old they are, other than that they are extremely old, and there are lots and lots of these things.
Yeah.
So when I kind of turned away a little bit from UFO investigation because it got too intense, I did miss that feeling of investigating a mystery. I missed that feeling of, you know, studying something that was enigmatic, you know, and puzzling over it. And these stone structures really kind of filled that void for me in a lot of ways. And of course, unlike a UFO, which you can't ever have in a laboratory or reproduce, if I go see a stone pile and then I go back there a year later, that pile is still there, right? I can continue to learn from it. It's a lot easier to deal with in that way. But I mean, there are so many miles of stone walls in New England.
It's crazy.
And we're basically told that all of these things were built between 1620 and 1800 or something, when they started making wire fences or whatever. But I don't actually think that's the case at all. You know, I think a lot of these walls were built by prehistoric people, and when you start studying this stuff, it's just unbelievable what kind of stuff is out there. And there's a lot of conventional archaeologists have kind of turned around on this stuff and have changed their attitude. At first, there were most archaeologists, the consensus of mainstream archaeology was that apparently that no Native American person for 10,000 years of Native American habitation here ever stacked two rocks on top of each other, right? That was the consensus. But now over time, I mean, there have been excavations that have absolutely proven, okay, this is a rock wall that was built by prehistoric people. This is a rock pile that was built by prehistoric people. And there's so much of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it can be it's basically impossible to tell from looking at something like that who built it or why.
Yeah.
But you can kind of, you can tell in certain cases if you dig it, but even in other cases, they've done archaeological excavations of some of these stone chambers and found them to be absolutely sterile, no artifacts whatsoever, which is itself, I think, evidence. It is itself really kind of compelling because, you know, if it was a root cellar, if it was built as a root cellar, you'd expect to find nails. You'd expect to find, you know, bits of implements that broke that was from agricultural use. But if it was a sacred spot, you know, maybe people didn't leave stuff there.
Sure.
You know, who goes to a church, right, and leaves something behind? You don't really do that.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to ask. What's your impression on what some of these kind of the things that are like chambers, what do you think the usage was?
I think there are definitely some stone chambers that were built in historic times as ice houses and some as root cellars, sure. But there are others that I feel almost certain were built in prehistoric times. Some of them may have been sweat lodges, and some of them I'm really convinced had a ceremonial purpose.
Sure.
And those sites are usually, the chamber in that site is usually not isolated, but it's connected to other enigmatic stone features like big balanced boulders, stone cairns, piles of stone, sometimes short stretches of wall. Sometimes there are things that are, I think, pretty clearly effigies, like a stone pile that's supposed to look like a turtle or supposed to look like a bird or a human figure or something like that.
You ever find any like petroglyphs or anything?
There are a few petroglyphs in Massachusetts. I've never discovered any that weren't previously known, but I've seen most of the existing ones. Elsewhere in New England as well, there are petroglyphs here, and they're really cool. There's some not too far away from where we are in Middleborough and in Lakeville. There are some really cool petroglyphs that are in the shape of a human hand that are pecked into rocks that are believed to have some shamanistic purpose. There are, like in Vermont, Bellows Falls, Vermont has great petroglyphs on the river there.
Isn't there in Vermont, they have like one with a bunch of faces?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That place is awesome. Yeah. And those faces, of course, they look like alien faces, right? Yeah. So it's that kind of gets them.
But anything does if you get it in a real simplistic form.
I think they're probably carvings of deer faces. Sure. Some of them have like little antennas that I think are antlers. But to look at something like that, and know that this was pecked into this rock with another rock by the people that came before us. I mean, to kind of veer off, I do think about Native Americans like all the time. I think about them very often. I think about the indigenous people that lived in New England before the settlers came, and their life way that had existed for thousands of years that vanished within the space of just a few generations when the colonists came. And on some level, I do mourn that loss. They had their great thinkers, and they had their own history and their own sagas, and like that stuff. A lot of that stuff is lost. I mean, there are still Native people here, to be clear, but their lifestyle was destroyed, and a lot of their connection to the past was irrevocably changed when the settlers came here. But on the other side of the coin, it was like unavoidable, right? You had the dawnings of the Industrial Revolution, and you had the Stone Age, and those things couldn't coexist.
Yeah, and this isn't like some people get mad if I say this, but that kind of has happened everywhere.
Sure.
It's just time goes on and things change and different people come around. And I'm not using this as an excuse for like colonialism or any of that stuff. People take things too far. Yeah. But I just mean like any kind of throughout history, other people have come into places like even in Europe, like with Celts and Gauls and all this and that, like people moved around and, like people came in and old ways changed into new and this and that. And that's the world.
Those things are happening now.
The world moves on. Like think about how different the world is now versus our grandparents' time. You know what I mean?
Tremendous difference. They wouldn't recognize our world.
Yeah, they would, and never mind what exponentially how fast things are changing, what 10 years is going to be like from now, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that there's going to be, a new thing, but, I'm not saying that anyone's going to come into America, like, you know what I mean? And new forces and take things over, but like
demographics change, right? People move into areas, culture changes. The place where I live, the town that I live in, Franklin, Massachusetts, it was, when I was growing up there, it was dominated by, Italian immigrants, first generation, people who come from Italy. Yeah. And most of those people are all gone now. Yeah. And it still maybe exists in the form of like street signs and vestigial stuff, or their descendants are here, but the old Italian festivals and stuff that used to happen in town, they don't happen anymore. Yeah. And other groups are moving in, and they bring their own food and their own festivals and things like that.
And, and it's like, you just kind of, honor what was there and just adapt and change and roll. I don't know. I was just kind of trying to roll with the punches, man. You know what I mean? But, at the same time, like respecting the past,
We have to. I have like a little bit of a, audience on the internet or whatever, because the fans of my bands follow me on Facebook and stuff like that. And I try to use that to some extent to promote things that I think are important. And one of the things that I've talked about a lot is the prehistoric people that lived in New England. Sure. The stuff that I find, and I mean, it's crazy to talk to people who own the property, right, where I find this stuff, who live in houses that are a stone's throw from some of these sites that I discover. And their minds are blown by what I find. Yeah. It has been super gratifying to me to, when I've been on tour with my band, to go to places where there are still like larger Native populations and to talk to Native Americans who are into the punk scene and fans of my band and have them say, hey, I see the stuff that you post about, Native Americans. I really appreciate it. You know,
Yeah.
thanks for like raising the consciousness, like keeping the interest alive, or just the awareness that, you know, I mean, I think about like when I was a kid, it's like, okay, I live in Massachusetts, Indians lived here. You know, and you kind of like picture like, I don't know, maybe this is just me, but when I was a kid, I imagined like some like lone, you know, Indian hunter, you know, stalking through some vast primordial wilderness, you know, alone. But it's like, it's totally different where it's like, no, Indians lived here in this spot by this stream for thousands of years. They like built homes here. They raised their families here. They like buried their dead here. They laughed. They had families. They had parties. They did all of this stuff in this spot. And if you look at the ground, you can still see the traces of it. You know, and it's like a totally different feeling.
Sure.
Totally different level of awareness.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it's just, you know, it's crazy the history that lies underneath the ground. It's just, I don't know.
So much of it.
Yeah, so much of it.
Colonial history too, and post-colonial history as well. You know, layers of our own past. I mean, the stuff that, like I say, my friend with the metal detector, the stuff that he finds where we'll be in some totally forsaken, you know.
I got a friend in Florida that just makes a whole living off metal detected on the beach.
I believe it.
You know what I mean? Just finding jewelry and
it's crazy
shit.
what we step on every day.
Yeah.
But we'll just be in some totally random place and he'll find some area where there's like a concentration of 1700s coins and buttons. And it's like this place, you know, and maybe they span a 50-year period, right?
Yeah.
And it's like this place was intensively used for generations.
Yeah.
In the in the 1700s, and now it's just there's nothing there, and there's nothing to indicate what was there except what was in the ground. Still tells a story.
Yeah.
And the Native American stuff too. Like, sometimes I'll be searching for arrowheads, and I'll be like finding an area with like a low density of quartz chips and flakes or other materials, right? And then suddenly I realize that there's tons of these flakes right where I am, and I start looking really closely at the ground, and I'll see little pieces of charcoal and rock that's been cracked from being in a fire, and it's like I am standing where their house was, here, you know, like not like vaguely here, but like where I stand, the ground surface had a wigwam on it, you know, people lived here.
Yeah. It's crazy, and you know, to go on what you're saying about like how things are changing so fast. Even when I was in school in the mid 90s, and I was in Arizona, we would do some stuff, and I would go out on the reservation, and there were parts like there was one time where that person I was telling you about earlier, who was a Native American healer, a shaman or medicine man, whatever, but worked at the VA. He brought me out to a sweat lodge ceremony way out on the Navajo reservation, and when we got to a certain extent out, like houses were being brought out there every day that like truck houses in, but we'd get out past where the houses ended, and people at, you know, in the mid 90s were still living in hogans, like, which was the Navajo houses, like these little round houses outside with like wells, like pumping the water out. And I'm sure that's all gone now. And I wish that I had more of my, you know, wits about me back then and kind of documented things a little bit more.
There might still be some, you know. I know there are people who probably take pride in a traditional life way. I've always really wanted to play a show on a reservation. We never did, but that would be a huge achievement for me. It would be very meaningful for me.
Yeah, and I know in Arizona, especially back then, you know, a lot of the kids from the reservations and stuff, like they were very into extreme music, whether it was metal or punk or hardcore.
When we've played shows in Oklahoma or in Nevada, I mean, there are Native Americans that come, and we've been invited to do stuff. I just have never been able to make it work.
Yeah, you're on tour. You're going somewhere. You got to be somewhere the next day or whatever.
And it's like, you know, I don't know if my band will ever like tour again like that. Probably not. You know, and to go all the way out there to play. For people who are like a lot of these people, you know, not to stereotype, but a lot of these people don't have a lot of like money to spend on merch or having your band play, right? So it would be kind of a vacation thing. Yeah. I don't have like the money to travel for vacations.
Yeah. No, I hear you, man. It's, you know, the music industry is kind of a weird thing. Like, and it's not, it's like you almost wish you were so independently wealthy that you could go do free shows so that
a lot of punk bands nowadays do that kind of stuff. You know, I see a lot of bands they can play in places like Indonesia, or they play in the jungle in South America, and that's awesome and it's cool and I respect what they're doing, but I also know that they are that tour is not paying for itself.
No,
that's them. That somebody has money and is buying those flights and is making all that stuff possible. You know what I mean? Which is great if you can travel that way. That's great if you have the money. That's great. But I personally am not in a situation where I can do a tour where
funding it. Yeah,
I can't fund it. It has to like, if not break even, like something. Right?
Yeah. It's crazy too. Like in this time, like I have a lot of friends that are still active in bands, and it's like South America like has just become like a major market for American bands to tour, or like Central America, whatever. Like,
well, those places have a different culture than here, and I think maybe the things that were valuable about these subcultures in America in like the 80s and 90s like still resonate in like some other places. You know, I was so fortunate we got to play Japan, and Japan is a very, you know, I enjoyed my time in Japan very much. Everyone in Japan was really nice to me. From what I'm led to believe, like Japan is kind of like a xenophobic culture a little bit, you know, and there still is like a monolithic mainstream. And I can tell you, like when you have a mohawk and you walk down the street in Japan, it's like turning heads, you know, compared to America where that's like business casual now, right? You know what I mean? So it's very different there, you know, and things are, I think on some level more real there in a way.
We went there, we built a bike for a guy in Japan, and we had a bike in a big bike show out there, and we went out there, and it was 2005, and it was the same thing. It was like there was still signs like up on certain restaurants that would show like a full sleeve or like a full body tattoo thing with like a red line and cross through it, like a circle and a cross, like can't come in here if you have tattoos, you know what I mean, and crazy shit like that.
It has meaning. It's different, you know. I mean, I would love to, you know, you sitting here in this tattoo shop, I mean, I would love maybe at a different time to just pick your brain about like tattoo culture and how that's all changed over time, because, you know, I was never a part of that. I don't have any, I have like basically no tattoos, but, you know, like just like you've got this thing that was like outcasts, you know, like you were like people with like throat tattoos, you know what I mean? Versus like now where it's like, I think like teenage girls get their throat tattooed first.
Yeah. No, we were talking about that. It went from like being a pirate's den, or like, you know, like my friends Don and Mike have a tattoo shop called Out Freak in Providence, and that was real tied into the punk scene and everything like that. And their card used to just say sailors and convicts on it, and it was like, you know what I mean? And then, you know, like, and I remember the days where, like, if dudes had neck or throat tattoos, that meant something, and you, like, stood the fuck away.
Show
like,
that man respect.
Yeah, I mean, we were friends with a lot of them, so it was cool, but, like, you also knew, like, fucking, you know, whatever. And now it's like you said, like, these kids come in and they get, the first thing they don't even have their arms done, they get their hands and their fucking necks tattooed. Yeah. And it's, you know, a lot of it is, like, everything that was, like, a subculture has been kind of taken in by the mainstream, like, and become like
co-opted in many ways.
And
nowadays, if I see like a 22-year-old girl who doesn't have any tattoos, it's like,
weird.
Oh, interesting. Like, what's your deal?
Yeah. How come? Yeah. And it's funny too, because like this is still kind of an old school shop, but like, you know, we've even had to change because, you know, you got to be a little bit, you know, the clientele has changed. You get a lot of just the quote unquote, no disrespect, but the quote unquote like soccer moms come in, and you can't be like, what the fuck do you want? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, which is how it used to be when we were kids. Like, you know, like I would just remember like, you know, like there used to be this guy that was the door guy at Art Freak, and his name was Jack. And he was fucking a nut. And you went in there, and he was like he was in his 40s back then. And I remember this to this day. Like, this is like my favorite tattoo memory. Like, he was like my age now, but when I was like 17, you know, and he got a big Sailor Jerry pirate head with a dagger in its mouth, and it just on the side it just said "Die, you bastard." And it was just like, and it was the best. It's one of the only tattoos in the world I'm jealous of. And I just remember him because I was so young, like I was 16, 17. He goes, "Yeah, my wife wasn't impressed," and I was just like, "That's so fucking awesome!" Like, you know, like that whole thing was like just stood in my head as like, "That's so fucking awesome!" Like, you know what I mean? But like, you know, in the back in the day, tattoo shops, you had to put your time in before people would have any kind of respect for you. Like, you were just like, who the fuck are you? What do you want? Blah, 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 you know, and then like the more time you know, generally, then you kind of made your way in and became accepted.
Punk was the same way.
Exactly.
All the subcultures were the same way.
Absolutely.
You would be treated like shit on day one, but if you like proved your merit over time, it was so meaningful. You know?
And you didn't have to do much to prove your merit other than staying around.
Yeah, be around. Exactly. You get to deal with some shit in the beginning. You know, someone pushes you, but at the next show, you're there again. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do miss that element of, not that there needs to be proving grounds for anything, but I it does weed the people that aren't serious out.
It's like positive gatekeeping in a way. You know, it's like these things aren't for everybody. If you make it for everybody, you lose something.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. But yeah, it you know, and it's just, you know, I don't know. We could go on about that. That's a whole different podcast. But anything that we didn't talk about that you think's important that we I know.
I don't know. I guess just, you know, there was something I think that I wanted to mention, since we've talked about all of these different subjects, is like kind of like the connection between like punk and UFOs and how that gets like perceived and how that perception has changed over time. Basically, I think part of the reason why I got into punk was some of the same impetus that had me getting involved in UFOs, where it's like, if you look at like the base meaning of what is a cult, it's like hidden knowledge, you know, and like, what are UFOs? That's like concealed, right? No one knows. And it's like, when I was a kid in the 90s, if you saw someone with like a crass emblem on their clothes, you had no way of finding out what that meant. You know, you had to ask them and they had to tell you. You had to find out through word of mouth what that meant. I even remember like going to shows like in 1996 and saying to some other young punk kid, like, what is crass? And they're like, I'm like, is that a band? Have you ever heard this band? They're like, it's not a band. It's like a movement or an ideology or something. It's like, of course, now I know it's a band, but you couldn't go on YouTube. You couldn't go on the internet and search crass band at that time and find anything, you know? And so through time, most of the people that I knew who were my peers in punk back then were like super interested and super supportive of like the UFO stuff. But like more lately, you know, in like the last 5 years, if I say anything that's like controversial on the internet, that's at like a place where a lot of people see it, some punk will invariably chime in and be like, well, this fucking guy believes in aliens. You know, this is the guy from Ancient Aliens. This guy is an idiot. Why would you believe anyone who's talking about aliens? And it's just like, seriously? Like, you know, what is it? You think that everything that is true is like on TV, like, you know, not on Ancient Aliens, right? But like on the news or like in the Bible or in the New York Times or whatever? Yeah. Like, how blinkered do you have to be where you're like, oh, this guy has like a weird view about something, like he isn't to be trusted? Like, what is more normative than that? Like that's fucking fascism. That's
yeah. You know? Well, that's the problem too, is when you know, a lot of times people don't realize that their views get so, I don't know how to say this, like fascism doesn't just have one face.
Right. You know
what I mean? And so like, if you are so stringent in your viewpoint that you can't accept any other viewpoint or whatever, like, that's fascism, like, you know what I mean?
It's certainly totalitarianism.
Totalitarian, yeah,
exactly. At the very least, you know, the amount of that goes around out there is it's just brutal. And you know, I certainly maybe this is a fault of mine, but I will like call it how I see it a lot of the times. And that has caused me to butt heads with a lot of people because my opinion or the way that I expressed it it offended their sensibilities or whatever. And I don't know, I kind of like got into subcultures to like meet other people who had a different viewpoint, had a different way of looking at things. And like, it's really sad to me now to see how this like mainstream dominant viewpoint has just come to envelop like everything around us, you know. But I think the internet is part of it. The polarization of our society is part of it. You know, all these things play into it. But the result is just, you know, personally, the result has been like a lot of alienation.
Sure. And, you know, one thing that you spoke about that you kind of touched on that I think is important too is like, I think pre-internet, and you know, obviously the internet is a fucking awesome tool, and I'm not down on it. But like in the world of like subcultures, they were so much cooler before the internet because you had to do the work to become part of it or to understand what was going on. Exactly what you said when you had to go up to someone, what is that? What's that crash symbol mean?
Right.
You know what I mean? You couldn't just type it into Google and then know and then see every fucking band member and every fucking change and every discography and download every song. You couldn't do it. Like you had to seek it out and really want it to get it. Like I remember trading records with people all over the fucking world because you couldn't get it. Like you couldn't just download. Guess what though? If I was a 14-year-old and I could just download it, I would have just downloaded it. But instead I can't. Yeah. I had to seek it out. Like
memorizing the names of bands from people's jackets and then going to the record store and trying to find those records. 'Cause you can't go to like your local, like, me living in the suburbs, right? I can't go to Strawberries at the CD store, and
you're
find
lucky if you could find like a Black Flag or something.
Or a Misfits thing was like, it was gold.
Yeah.
And then if you found a Black Flag thing or a Misfits thing, right? You had no way of knowing how many other records those bands had.
Yeah.
And in many of those cases, you had no way of finding out when those records came out. I mean, I remember someone gave me a cassette tape.
You had no way of sampling it. So if you went and because you heard Black Flag and you heard something off Damage and you bought the Process of Weeding Out, you were fucking bummed out. You were like, what the fuck is this?
I saw Dead Kennedys stuff all over people's clothes.
Yeah.
I wanted to buy a Dead Kennedys record. I bought one at random, Bedtime for Democracy, their very last record.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like the earlier stuff.
No.
Now I like it, but at the time I was like, I fucking hate Dead Kennedys.
Yeah.
And then later someone was like, what is this? Fresh fruit, rotting vegetables. I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
But it's like, I remember when I was a young punk, like 15 years old, I got a tape for my friend's dead brother. He had a Black Flag tape, and it was Everything Went Black.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that, it was a tape made from the CD, from SST Records. At the end of that CD is it's like a compilation of like little promos for upcoming shows that aired on the radio in like 1982, 1983. But I'm listening to this in 1995, 1996. I don't know if these are actual upcoming shows or shows from last year.
Yeah.
No way of knowing when this was recorded.
Yeah. And it was like, it was like punk rock was like almost like a secret society. Like you had to get in.
It was as a cult as UFOs. It was as a cult as anything else. It was like word of mouth, a piece of paper, flyer, hard copy, or someone corresponding with people.
Or just someone that, by luck of the draw you met handing something down to you. Like I still remember dudes that gave me old 7 inches. Like, oh, you would really like this. This is something you need to know.
I remember.
Blah, blah,
blah. People would laugh at this because it sounds so cheesy, right? But it's like, hey man, like, since I've been seeing you around a lot lately, why don't you check out this tape? And it's like, you're like worthy of hearing this band's now.
Yeah.
Or even like, I'd be like making mixtapes for like people that I knew, like girls I was dating or something when I was a kid. And one of my friends would be like, I don't know, you think you should like let her know about this band? You know what I mean? And like, yes, that's like ridiculous and cheesy.
Yeah, but a little elitist, but it was what it was.
It meant something, it's like, if you're into this, you have unlocked an achievement. It's a path.
Yeah.
I know we sound like boomers, you know what I mean? Talking about
this
but
now. Whatever,
Yeah.
But it's just...
Maybe for some people it's interesting. This was how it was. That's how it was.
It's just how it was. We sound like boomers, but we're also talking like anthropologists and archaeologists and saying this is the difference of what it was then versus what it is now.
It's important to recognize that a change has taken place.
Yeah.
And it's important for everybody, for those of us who experience the change to memorialize it, and for those of us who are in it now to be like, if you're taking on the mantle of this subculture, like you have to understand where this came from.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean? And you don't have to... it's no diss to some 15-year-old kid now.
You don't have
just
to
understand what we went through, and then just have an understanding of that and a respect for it. Yeah. Like the way I have a respect for people that were punks in the 70s.
Same.
You know what I mean?
You don't have to show deference to it.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily better than you.
No.
And you make your own path. You know what I mean? You can make punk what you want it to be.
Yeah. You should take it and go running in the direction you want. Yeah.
Know what it was.
Yeah, know what it was. Absolutely. And that's something that I always... I was bummed that I missed the thing before me, I got into it like in the mid 80s. I was still a kid, so I didn't fully understand. It was like 85. I was 13, I didn't get everything. But like I knew that I was like, fuck, I really wish I was around in 81 to see these guys and these guys, you know, and I can't believe I missed it. I would look up in reverence to the people that did. That's fucking so rad that you get to see that.
Especially the people who were there when it was really new.
Yeah.
What it was like for them. I mean, they were the real fucking people.
When there was 30 people at a show, but it was 30 fucking motherfuckers that were
when
really
you know,
there.
Misfits were playing in a basement.
Yeah.
You know, and like what that music must have been like when it was newer. Like I listened to recently to like Crass Peel sessions from like 1979 or something, and it's like that sounds so fresh. And like what that sounded like in 1979.
Yeah,
I can't imagine it. I can't imagine.
People are still listening to fucking disco.
Yeah, and like fucking doo-wop and shitty male vocal shit or whatever it was, right? Yeah. And it's like you listen to that and it's like, holy hell.
Yeah.
Or Discharge or all these influential bands of which, like I say, there's never going to be another one, I fear.
No, yeah. You know? I hope there is, you know what I mean? And
but it'll be something different.
Yeah.
You know, whatever.
We won't understand it.
We won't understand it.
I'll
hate it. I'll hate it. I know, it's not for me.
But that's our place. We should hate it and not understand it.
Maybe I'll appreciate it from afar.
Yeah.
But I hope it's cool. I hope it has some balls. That's what I want.
I just hope that people fucking snap out of like these fucking narratives that are being spun that people are buying into and really start to just rule number one of fucking punk rock, question authority. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Just remember that.
Don't swallow this shit. Don't fucking do it.
Yeah. And
if they say fucking do yes, do no. That's the thing. You know what I mean? It's like, fuck you, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. The first thing that should have happened when they found out all these governors or whoever were allowing riots were to not riot.
Well, that's, you know,
you know what I mean?
Like, see, then you get into some like weird territory, right?
Sure,
I know, like how that goes. But no, I mean, like, I don't know. It's just like there's pressure now to like support like social movements of today that like banks support, that fucking government support. And it's like, I don't know. I don't really feel, if me and Bank of America are on the same side of an
Something's
issue,
wrong.
I'm on the wrong issue.
Yeah, that's all I meant.
I gotta back out. No, I know.
That's all I meant. It's fucking crazy.
For sure.
It's a fucking weird time, man. But I guess hopefully it's an awesome time, man. Maybe we'll see some crazy shit like that. Like our good comes from all this.
Well, I've loved some of the stuff that we've seen already this year. I mean, look, fucking burning down police stations, I'm fine with.
Yeah. Well, that was always my gripe. I was like, you know what? You want to protest something and don't loot a Foot Locker. Fucking go to
burn
City
down the
Hall.
police station.
Go to the City Hall.
They did it though.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Which
it.
is like fuck yeah.
Yeah, fucking. Yeah, that's making your point. You know what I mean? Like you're protesting police brutality. Go take it to them. You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
Take it to them. Not always, you know, a good point, but a popular viewpoint. But it's just, you know, looting a neighborhood store is not furthering any cause. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, especially like, I get it if it's like a Walmart or some like something, but like it's just like someone's mom and pop store. Come on, man, you fucking.
You know, part of me is still 15 years old in my heart and just wants to destroy absolutely
everything. Yeah. No, I get that. I get that too. You know what? You know when a lot of that ended for me is when I moved to the woods.
Sure. I mean, you know, this is another thing that we could probably talk about forever. Is like, you know, I think it's cool. This shop is cool. I think it's cool where your motorcycle thing is. Like, I live in the suburbs. I fucking love living in the suburbs. I love it. You know what I mean? And I would fucking fight to the death to defend how awesome it is to live in the suburbs.
I actually made a shirt that has a big AR-15 on it, and it just says "Defend Freetown," and that's one of the Chop Ed shirts. It doesn't even say Chop Ed on it; just has a CHKC like, and it's just a big "Defend Freetown" because it's like, to me it's like, and I did. I like, you know, when I moved out of Dorchester and Southie, and then I moved to Dartmouth, which is more suburbs, and now I'm more even rural, and I'm like, fuck yeah. I'm like, how can I make it so that I see even less people, and then I'm more happier, you know what I mean?
A lot of the punk friends that I still have also live in other suburbs, and their fucking houses are wicked awesome. They have everything set up in this awesome way, and their fucking rent is dirt cheap, and they can get all kinds of different jobs. There's money to be made, and it's like, if you want fucking Chinese food, there's Chinese food. If you want tacos, there's tacos. You know?
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I can get to Boston in 40 minutes.
Totally.
You know, and then come home.
You know, there was something to be said about punk being like an urban street subculture, but it's like, go to the fucking, I go to the places where I used to hang out when I was a punk. I go to Harvard Square or whatever.
Gone.
All that shit is fucking gentrified, gone. Rich people, bullshit. The places where I lived,
it's all
I could never
shit.
afford to live there anymore. The people who live there are fucking garbage.
You think kids will have their say or Tom's Tracks or any of these old record stores could go open up there now?
No,
like,
I mean, no way.
Hell
you know,
no.
think about Second Coming record. They had to go to
Second
Haverhill
Coming.
eventually. You know what I mean? It's like, ultimately, it's like find a fucking place where you could be. I don't know. I'd love to like find some like hilltop, build a fucking fortified hill fort up there, have punks up there. You know what I mean? And just, I don't know. This is our world is changing, and like the beat of the street as far as being on like the downtown of your city, like might not be the place to be anymore. You know?
No, but it's true. Like when I was a kid and younger, I loved living in the city.
Sure.
I loved it. It's like the fierce.
When I moved there, I thought I would never not live in the city.
And then as soon as I got out, in my 30s or whatever, and I was just like, late 30s. I was like, I have no reason to go back. I go back to visit. Go back to have a good time, go to shows.
I was still in my early 20s when I moved out of the city. So I grew up in the suburbs, moved to the city, lived there for some years, and then some life circumstances changed. I actually wound up getting married.
Yeah, sure.
And I couldn't afford to not live in a city apartment where I didn't have a shit ton of roommates. I didn't want to have a shit ton of roommates. But I thought once I got some more money together, I'd be back in the city. Yeah. And then one day it's just like, what the fuck do I want to live there for anymore? No. And
it's
like
fun to go visit. It's good to come home.
Yeah, big time. And even like I say, even like the punk houses that I like to visit the most, where it's like you'll find like you could go there on almost any time and see a bunch of cool people hanging out. It's like in some fucking random place.
Yeah. Yeah, because you know what? No one can live in Austin anymore.
No way.
Anywhere.
Austin was cool when I lived there, and I'm sure for people who are listening to this, who maybe some of my friends do still live in Austin. They're like hanging on. They're doing good. Good for them. I have all the respect in the world.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
They have to put up with a bunch of bullshit. I wouldn't want to put up with it. No.
And the thing is like I live in Freetown in a 2,000 square foot house on an acre and a half, and I'm paying less than what like for my mortgage and insurance and in taxes combined is probably less than what a 1-bedroom in Boston goes for nowadays. You know what I mean? And
absolutely.
It's like, I come home, I have like a football field size yard in front of my house, and I drive down that driveway, and I'm like, I don't have to drive around for 45 minutes to find a place to fucking park. I get out of the car.
Nature. You can be you.
Yeah, I'm just gonna make sure I don't hit a deer or something, or a puck wedgie, right? or a fucking some orbs or something. You know what I mean? But I'll deal with that more than the population of the city.
Fucking $15 fucking carrot sandwich. I don't need it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, but fuck yeah, man. Well, dude, it was so fucking good having you on, and that was a really interesting and fucking, especially at first, intense conversation, man. I want to thank you for coming on and being candid. Is there anything you want to kind of give out, like if someone wanted to kind of follow what you're up to, like as far as like websites or social media or anything?
Geez, I don't know. I'm so like disconnected even from social media. I have like a Instagram where I show some pictures of some historical and nature stuff. It's at Among the Dead Cities. And I've also got another Instagram that I run with my friend who has a metal detector that is arrowhead finds and stuff. It's at From Antiquity.
Okay.
So you can send a message to, if you want to get in touch with me, you can shoot me a message at Among the Dead Cities, but I don't check it all the time. So
yeah. And what about like, do you have any the website still up with like some of the research?
I've got a website. I've got actually a couple of websites. I've got cellarwalls.com. That's got pictures of the stone structures. There's sites there that date from prehistoric times through like more modern stone ruins in New England. And then you can also go to cellarwalls.com/UFO. And that's my old UFO website that I first built in 1999. I probably haven't done anything on it in 10 years, but there's still a lot of information on there if people want to check that out.
Cool. And I'll put that in the show notes, man.
Cool.
But again, thank you so much for coming out and hanging out today. And let's definitely talk soon, man.
I would love to. Yeah, this has been super fun. It's been an honor to be here.
Thank you.
Shop at Sherwin-Williams, where pro painters save every day. As a Pro Plus member, you get exclusive discounts on paint and supplies, so you can increase your profits and get to your next job faster. With Pro Plus pricing, discounts start on day one and include 20% off all case quantities. No need to earn or track points. Save on paint? Check. Caulk? Check. Tape? Check, check, check. Sherwin-Williams is where pros shop and save. Stop by and start saving with Pro Plus pricing today.
Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience and their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's Libsyn ads.com today,